Your Indian River County Commission meeting begins at 9 a.m.
Order. And Dr. Charles Lieber, Senior, will be doing the invocation, and if you'll stay standing, please, for Commissioner Fletcher to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we gather here today during this season which is holy to so many faiths, mindful of the gift of life you have entrusted to each one of us, and of the stewards you have called us to become of all creation. We gather here as individuals of faith, seeking your will and your way in all that we do, knowing that when we follow the plan of the Creator of the universe, that there is nothing more that we need to do. And yet, O gracious God, we often struggle with differing opinions concerning the directions we should take, not always clear as to the direction we should take. And yet we all agree that you have blessed us with a wonderful community, and we are all committed to working for its continued betterment. Enlighten us with your wisdom, direct us in your paths, and strengthen us in all times and in all ways, that we will always do that which is right over that which is expedient. We thank you, God, for those and for these who serve as county commissioners, and for those who serve in all positions within our county, and for their willingness to give of their time and talents in service to our community. We thank you, God, this day not only for those who serve, but for those who live and grow within this community whom we seek to serve. And as a community, may we find guidance and direction in the words of your servant John Wesley, who proclaimed, "In essentials, unity; in non-essentials, liberty; and in all things, love." And so may it be. Amen.
Amen.
Please join with me as we pledge our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a couple of additions to the agenda. Addition 5. Let me make sure here. Just a minute. Yeah. 5.A.1, Point West Winterfest, and there's no backup. That'll be a presentation by Mr. Meckling. And then we have a correction to 7A, a correction of dates in the subject line. And also, I want to add under my items, Cloud Grove Stewardship District, letter dated December 5th, 2006. And, well, we got another correction. 9A1 will be replace pages 130 and 131, and that should already be in your...
Move approval as amended.
Could one vote keep that from happening, Commissioner?
Beg your pardon?
Could one vote keep that from happening?
What's that?
The 13A?
Yes, it could.
Just checking.
Yeah.
But I moved approval as amended. Do I have a second?
Second. Oh, this is an emergency, though, right?
Absolutely.
It is an emergency.
Okay.
The emergency on that item, the item that I'm adding to mine is the fact that they will be, Cloud Grove's legal staff will be going in front of the state legislative delegation on Thursday to ask for a community development district in our county by special act of the legislature, and us not having a choice over our own destiny here as to how we treat these districts. So, but we'll get into that. And next is approval of the minutes for...
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Like sign. Motion carries. And the consent agenda. Anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull H and J.
H and J.
I have a question on 8.
Chairman, we also have a correction on J that we needed, the date correction.
Okay. Okay, any other items to be pulled? If not, we get a motion.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve the remainder of the consent agenda. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Peter?
Again, Centex Homes coming up. I just want to make it clear from last week that I see in the letter of credit, it is for a 2-year period to December of '08, and just want to make clear that we expect all the site work and everything to be completed and not be coming back for extensions. So I just want to make that point.
Okay, any other comments?
I have a comment. The sidewalks that are on Indian River Boulevard, will they be completed before anyone moves in?
Stan Bowling, County Planning Director. No, the way that sidewalks, a lot of times off-site sidewalks along roads like this, the reason there's a 2-year bond form is a lot of times they're done at the end of a CO for an individual unit. But the sidewalks along Indian River Boulevard are part of this, so they do have 2 years to put them in. And they could get units CO'd before that particular sidewalk segment is done.
One of the things, I anticipate children being in this complex, is that correct? A lot of children.
No restrictions on age, right?
Probably a lot of children perhaps might be there. And I'm looking at the bus schedules, early morning when it's dark. This is a safety issue on a very high-profile road that gets more congested all the time. And if we could look to see that that is done quickly and promptly, and the sidewalks inside, because the buses will be coming in from the schools and will be departing, bringing and leaving. And I think that's such a large complex like this off of a busy road, that should be a priority. Could you keep us up to date on that? Thank you. And the Mylar, is that correct? What is that exactly?
That's the plastic venom that the plat is laid out on. It's reproducible in the courthouse records, and they run blueprints off that vellum. It's a plastic vellum.
It's actually the plat. It's just the material on which the plat.
The recommendation is after the security has been reviewed, approved, and validated. Is that normal?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And I got a couple of questions, too. I see they're doing a letter of credit, $269,000 with SunTrust, but where does the maintenance bond come in for the following, when they finish the project? So we did a 2-year maintenance bond.
We do maintenance bonds on subdivisions. I don't believe we have any security requirements for site plan projects. They're internally owned, operated, managed, and it's entirely the developer who's creating the community's responsibility to maintain that. We have no requirements.
So this doesn't apply to this?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, so there's no security on this?
Well, there's security to guarantee that they will complete the sidewalks that they're required to put in, but there's no security for the purpose of warranting the improvements that they put in.
Okay.
Well, there's a recommendation by staff that they would like to see the security reviewed and approved and validated.
That's for the sidewalks.
Okay, just for the sidewalks.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we get a motion on this?
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. J?
This is the purchase of the Shadow Brook, and I guess there's contamination on the site, and I just want to make sure it's clear that if we do go forward with the $450,000 escrow amount, we still have the option to bail out if the contamination greatly exceeds that amount and is worse than we anticipate at that point. We still have that option.
I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. Before you pull this off, staff was going to pull this off too. And we're going to pull it off to make one change to the purchase agreement, the extension of it, and there's been subsequent discussions with the seller, and the seller would like to close earlier, and the county feels that everything can be done to close earlier. But you're correct. When the county did its environmental audit, like we do with all purchases, we did find that there was some contamination on the property, so there needs to be remediation. And what is proposed in here is that the county will actually close on the property. The seller will post a bond that the county feels is more than sufficient to cover the cost of the remediation. The bond will be in the amount of $450,000. The seller will be responsible for doing the remediation. So the seller still has the responsibility. The county will be holding a bond that it feels is more than adequate to cover that. But we do propose closing on the property, and the suggested changes to the contract here are, instead of closing on February 28th, the seller would like to close on January 31st, and staff does not have a problem with that.
Why? Why would they want to close earlier? It's not to our benefit to do this. Why?
I'm assuming the seller wants to get his money sooner.
Right, it's not to our benefit. So I was wondering why you would recommend this.
I think at the time that the county and the applicant were drafting this third amendment, the county thought it was going to take a longer time to actually nail everything down. But at this point, we will have everything done on our end to be able to do a closing January 31st, and we're okay with that.
Either way, we're going to close on the property.
Correct.
And I saw you had two probable cost scenarios, and the second one is like the worst case condition, and that came in about $400,000. So at $450,000, you guys are confident that we have more than enough in the bank to cover the remediation?
From staff, Roland DeBlois, Chief of Environmental Planning, from us, it's probably going to be closer. We expect it's going to be closer to the typical scenario, which is the first opinion of probable cost. The second one was done to make absolutely sure that the escrow would cover it, and we're pretty confident.
Okay.
And when do you anticipate the clearance of the environmental issue?
It's going to take a number of months to do that. There has to go through DEP permitting process. They have to approve the remediation plan, and then the remediation has to get carried out. But we feel confident that this is the way to go. If the other side of it is, aside from this quarter acre of contamination on the 29-acre site, there's a lot of support for this as an important environmental project within the overall St. Sebastian River Greenway. So rather than just terminate the acquisition, I think the consensus has been reported to the LAC, and we're all working with the Indian River Land Trust, and we feel that this is an important environmental project such that the arrangement is the preferred alternative than to just terminate the purchase, and that's staff's position.
And you feel like it would be terminated if we don't close early?
Well, this is the negotiated arrangement. The other option that's written into our option is just for the county to terminate the contract and not buy the property.
Yeah. That sort of puts us in a box.
Well, we feel that this is an appropriate alternative to terminating the contract, and again, staff supports this arrangement.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I move staff recommendation to exercise the third option agreement for purchase.
We have a motion?
I'll second that. With the January 31st
Yes.
date? Okay.
And if you will keep us up to date on the process and the progress or lack of progress on the contamination issue?
Yes, just as a matter of course, county staff regular monthly or periodic management reports on properties and also lack site status reports, and we'll make sure that the commission's advised. Thank you.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we're going to do the presentation from Point West.
Good morning. Thank you. Again, we're having the third annual Winterfest, and we see the wreath on the door up there from last year. And Karen will be passing out some information. And again, this is something that'll be on the event field at Point West. It'll be a day of festivities, and this is obviously something that's done in a cooperative effort with the rec department, with everybody down there, and it'll be a day for fun and festivities. There'll be a snow mountain, ice skating rink, Santa and Mrs. Claus will be there, the Vero Beach High School Chorus will be there, the Sebastian River High School Jazz Ensemble, Santa's Fun Zone, food vendors, more. And in the evening, it'll be a fireworks display, and if anybody was there last year, it was a phenomenal display all the way around. A very, very fun time. The Sunday, if there's rain that day, Sunday evening will be the alternative day for the fireworks, as weather would be a situation that they couldn't do Saturday, but hopefully we'll have great weather. And it would be great if people could bring a toy that the Exchange Club Castle will be doing a toy drive for families within Indian River County, and those toys stay within Indian River County for the families in need. So it's a community event for all involved, and it's just a fun time all the way around. And I'll have Mike say.
And keep your fingers crossed for no rain.
That's right.
That's my
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Redstone, Assistant Director of Recreation. We want to invite everyone out to December the 16th, the Winterfest. We're looking forward to it. Should be a fun time. The fireworks were awesome last year, and we expect them to be awesome again this year. The event is free, and it's open to the whole family. So we have a special guest with us this morning, Rudolph. Made a special appearance this morning. So again, we want to wish everybody a happy holiday, and we'll see you at Winterfest.
Thank you.
I'm sitting here, Rudolph.
Chuck or Mike, I see you're wanting unwrapped gift items for children newborn through 17. Where would those gifts be brought?
There is a toy center that'll be at the Winterfest, so a drop-off point there. And right now, if people choose to, at the model centers out there, we have a toy drive drop-off as well, and there'll be a Friday night event before Winterfest there as well, just to try and bring home some gifts for the families that are in need in Indian River County.
Thank you, Chuck. We'll move to public items, and under public hearings, we have consideration for approval of proportionate fair share agreement and developers agreement for Oslo and 27th LLC, and approval of an amendment to the capital improvements element of the comprehensive plan to include the four-laning of 27th Avenue from 13th Street Southwest to 17th Street Southwest. Memorandum dated December 5th, 2006, found on pages 98 through 166.
Mr. Chairman, this is an item that staff has spent a lot of time on in the last few weeks, but finally it all came together. And not only community development staff, administration staff, Joe and Mike Zito spent a lot of time, the attorney staff, Will and Bill spent a lot of time, Jason in budget, and also Public Works and Traffic Engineering. We've spent a lot of time on this agreement, and I think we're all glad it finally came together. I did pass out to you earlier today a revised Exhibit C. Actually, the changes don't really affect the bottom line. The numbers that are in the agreement and the various exhibits to the agreement really don't change. The bottom line is the changes on Exhibit C really reflect the fact that the applicant miscalculated the impact fee amounts, and when those changed, it changed a bunch of numbers in the whole exhibit. But let me give you a little background on this case. What we have here is Oslo 27 LLC. That's the applicant in this case. And Oslo 27 LLC wants to build a commercial development in the Oslo Road 27th Avenue area. And the proposed development's a little over 44,000 square feet in size. When the applicant did his traffic impact analysis, it showed that his project is going to have an impact on 3 27th Avenue links that are already deficient. They're already over capacity. So there's not enough capacity on those links to accommodate the developer's project. Now, what's more problematic is one of those 3 links is not in the county's 5-year capital improvements program. And because that one link isn't in the 5-year CIP, the applicant can't just do a proportionate share agreement. He can't just pay and go. Well, in a case like this, what has to happen is the link would need to be put in the county's 5-year CIP, and to do that, it has to be financially feasible. And just to give you a little background, the county's 5-year transportation capital improvements program is an ambitious program as it is. It's about $330 million worth of projects in a 5-year period. And that is a significant amount of construction that the county anticipates doing. And because the CIP needs to be balanced, it needs to be financially feasible. The costs for all the projects that are reflected in the CIP need to be balanced with revenues to pay for those costs. The county just couldn't add every single project that would be desired over the next 5-year period. Consequently, the one link of 27th Avenue that the applicant impacts, which is 27th Avenue really from 13th Street Southwest to 17th Street, isn't in the CIP. In working with the applicant, he's come up with a proposal to address his situation, and I've got the major parameters of that proposal shown on the screen here. With what you have before you today, there are several items that are proposed. One is a developer's agreement with a number of exhibits to it. The other is a proposed amendment to the county's capital improvements element to add a portion of 27th Avenue to the 5-year CIP. And the way we got to this point is the developer came in, and this is Mr. Swanson, who represents Oslo 27 LLC. And Mr. Swanson proposes to widen the segment of 27th Avenue from 13th Street Southwest to 17th Street Southwest from 2 lanes to 4 lanes at his cost. And the total amount for doing that is estimated to be $4,356,000. Now, because the applicant proposes to pay the cost of doing that widening, the county can add that to the 5-year capital improvements program because it would be financially feasible. We're not looking at using gas taxes. We're not looking at using 1 cent local option sales tax. We're not looking at using impact fees. We're not looking at using grant funds. What we're saying here is there is another revenue source coming in that we haven't relied on or are not currently relying on with the rest of the projects in our CIP. So this would be financially feasible, and the county can amend its capital improvements element to add this link to the CIP, and therefore the applicant could enter into a prop share agreement. Continuing on down the proposal, as I said, the developer agreed to widen the road. The county will be adding, what the proposal is, the county will add that segment to the CIP. The developer will pay, as a matter of fact, he has already paid all of his impact fees, traffic impact fees, other fees. His proportionate share fee for this segment of Oslo Road, as well as the prop share fees for the other two deficient segments of 27th that he's impacting, and he'll pay all his water and sewer connection charges. Now, the way we have negotiated with the developer in this case is he will get a credit on his traffic impact fees for the proportionate fair share amount that he's paying for the segment of 27th Avenue that he's going to expand from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And this is an allowance that the county has in Title 10, which is our impact fee ordinance. Generally, or what we allow in the impact fee ordinance, we allow credits against impact fees if an applicant is building a capacity producing facility that is on the county's long-range plan. In this case, this segment of 27th Avenue, while it's not in the CIP, it is in our long-range transportation plan. It is in the 20-year plan. And our ordinances say if a developer is coming in and making an improvement such as this that is beneficial to the county, that the county has identified it wants and needs, then the developer can get an impact fee credit there. So we are looking at, and the way we've structured it, the way we've negotiated it, he will get a credit against his impact fees for the proportionate fair share amount that he's paying, which would be over and above his impact fees. Now, as I go on, we have negotiated with the developer to allow other developers who will be coming in impacting the segment of 27th Avenue that the developer is building and creating additional capacity for. These other developers will be paying proportionate fair share amounts that will be given to Oslo 27 LLC to reimburse them for the money that they're putting up to build the road, and these future developers will get a credit against their impact fees based on the same logic that Oslo LLC will get. I've digressed a little bit, but going back down in the proposal, you can see the fourth bullet is after the developer does all of these things that he's committed to, he will get a concurrency certificate, a CCI 5, a 5-year concurrency certificate. And as I said, in the next bullet reflects the developer, even though he's agreeing to build the road that's estimated to cost $4.3 million, he will get incremental reimbursement from other developers that come in and use some of the additional capacity that Oslo 27 LLC is creating over and above what it needs for that segment of 27th Avenue. And future projects will get that prop share credit against their impact fees only until July 1st of this coming year. So there's an incentive for other developers to come in early. After that, other developers will still pay proportionate fair share fees, and those fees will go to Oslo 27 to reimburse them for the cost of the roadway, but those developers will not get that prop share fee credit against their impact fee if they come in after July 1st of 2007. Now, I know that's a lot to explain, and it's kind of complex, and that's why it took us a long time to really go through this process. I do want to just walk you through the attachments that you have to the staff report. The first one and the major, well, the most important attachment that you have really is probably the developer's agreement. And that is the contract between the county and the applicant that commits the developer to design, acquire right-of-way, construct, and do the construction engineering and inspection, everything that is required to build a road. And he is committed to do that for that segment of 27th Avenue from 13th Street Southwest to 17th Street Southwest. That developer's agreement also commits the applicant to post security in the amount of 115% of the estimated cost of building the road, and that security needs to be posted within 14 days of approval of the developer's agreement. And only after posting of the security will the developer be issued a concurrency certificate. The security will commit the developer and give the county the comfort level that the project will be built regardless of what happens. Going on, another important attachment that is really a part of the developer's agreement is Exhibit D. And Exhibit D constitutes the proportionate fair share agreement between the county and the applicant. And you can see this is really only the second proportionate share agreement that we've done. We did one several weeks ago. This is the second one. And you can see from your backup, if you look at Exhibit D, there are 3 separate proportionate fair share payment amounts that the applicant is paying. And as I indicated, his project impacts 3 deficient links. 2 of them are on the 5-year CIP, so he can enter into prop share agreements without anything unusual. The third link, the 27th Avenue, 13th Street Southwest to 17th Street Southwest, is not in the 5-year CIP, so that needs to be added to the CIP portion of the capital improvements element, and then he can pay that prop share agreement. If you look in there, you can see that the prop share amounts are pretty hefty in there. You can see that for the link that he's actually building, the prop share amounts almost $212,000. For one of the other links, it's $334,000, and then it's almost $79,000 for another link. So these prop share amounts are pretty significant. Going down the attachments, another important attachment is Exhibit E, and that's Exhibit E to the Principal Developers Agreement. And what that is really a model proportionate fair share agreement that will be used by other developers who come in, impact the segment that the applicant's going to build, and propose to use some of the capacity that the applicant is going to create by increasing the road from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And that prop share agreement has blanks in it because those blanks will be filled out when each individual project comes in, and the individual prop share amount will be unique to each for each applicant. The final attachment that I want to reference is Comp Plan Amendment Ordinance. We do have an ordinance in your backup that reflects adding the segment of 27th Avenue from 13th Street Southwest to 17th Street Southwest to the 5-year capital improvement program component of the capital improvements element. And actually, that's the reason that this item is a public hearing today. And I think I've mentioned this before, but the state modified its rules for comp plan amendments and now is a little more lenient with amendments to the capital improvements element. Unlike regular standard comp plan amendments, amendments to the capital improvement element can be made anytime, as many times during the year as a county wants to, and it requires only 1 public hearing. So that's what is being done here, and the county's done the advertising for the public hearing, and it is before you today and proposed as a public hearing. Let me just walk you through some numbers here. I think Joe Baird's always a little leery when planners start dealing with numbers, but I do want to tell you that Jason Brown has looked at these and he has concurred. We're all comfortable with these. But if you look at on the screen, the total proportionate fair share amount for the 3 links that the applicant's impacting is almost $625,000. His total impact fees, which are transportation impact fees as well as the other 8 impact fees, and are in addition to the prop share amount, is $628,000. So his total impact and prop share fees are over $1.2 million. As I indicated before, in this process, we have negotiated that the applicant would get a credit on his prop share amount because he's going to build the road, and that credit would be given to or would be applied against his total impact fees. So basically, when you apply the $212,000 credit to the $1.2 million liability, you come out with a total amount of prop share and impact fees with the credit at $1,041,679.70. Add to that water and sewer connection charges of almost $50,000, and you come up with a total of just under $1.1 million. We have received checks for those amounts. The checks are here, the money's in the bank. So all of this money has been received. It's not dependent upon the developer getting together the money and giving it to us down the road. Now, as I indicated, Exhibit E is the model fair share agreement for other developers, impacting the length that the applicant is going to improve. And reflected in that prop share agreement is that any other developer impacting that link must pay his prop share amount for that link. And that will be calculated based on the formula that we have in Chapter 910, actually 910.12, which is the prop share portion of 910. And as I said before, that prop share amount will be applied against the $4.3 million estimated project cost. It'll, in essence, be reimbursed to the applicant for a portion of the cost that he's incurring to build the road. A future developer impacting that link must also pay all of his other impact fees. And if that applicant comes in by July 1st of 2007, he will get a credit applied against his traffic impact fees of the prop share amount that he's paying, but that credit will be capped at 45% of the total traffic impact fee liability portion of his impact fees. And then the developer that's impacting the link, just like the applicant, needs to pay any other prop share amounts if he's impacting other deficient links, and he needs to pay all of his water and sewer connection charges. And at that point, that developer can also obtain a CCI 5, a 5-year concurrency certificate. With all of that explained, and I know there's a lot to it, staff's recommendation is that you approve the developer's agreement, which include all the attachments, and authorize the chairman to sign it. We recommend that you open the public hearing on the comp plan amendment and you take public comment on that. And then we recommend that after the public hearing, you approve the comp plan amendment by adopting the ordinance that's attached to your staff report. And with that, me and the other staff that worked on this, I think, would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of staff?
Yes. Now, Mr. Keating, correct me if I'm wrong here, but wasn't Turtle Creek to provide or to build the links to the north of Oslo Road to at least 5th Street Southwest?
Yes, that's correct. Turtle Creek has an obligation to widen 27th from 2 to 4 lanes from 13th Street Southwest to 5th Street Southwest.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I'm looking in the backup for the P&S Properties developers agreement, and that's to be done within 24 months. The 17th Street to 13th Street Southwest. And my question is where in line, or what was I don't remember the time frame for Turtle Creek to provide from 13th Street Southwest north to 5th Street Southwest on 27th Avenue?
And actually, I don't know the specific time frame, but along with that, the county is actually designing improvements to Oslo Road and the Oslo 27th intersection. And actually, the same engineering firm is working on the Turtle Creek project, the county project, and the Oslo 27 project. So hopefully these are going to be done all together.
That's really where I'm going with this. I mean, if Mr. Swanson started out now and he's got 24 months to get his done, everybody else had a running start, including the county. I don't see why we shouldn't be able to, to get this project done instead of it being a segmented approach to road improvements.
The only thing that could cause that is right-of-way problems. If we have right-of-way problems, sometimes we end up slowing. We may do a section ahead just to show progress, but sometimes there's right-of-way problems that we're going to attempt to do it all.
Are we aware of any right-of-way problems at this time?
Well, I think Jim Davis is here, and he'd be best to answer that question.
Jim Davis, Public Works Director. There are some right-of-way issues along Oslo Park subdivision on the east side of 27th, which is from 15th Street Southwest north to about 13th Street Southwest.
Okay.
So until the final design is complete, we really won't know if we will need 5 or 10 feet of right-of-way there on the east side. The west side is Turtle Creek, and that right-of-way has not yet been deeded, but we feel it's imminent. To the north of 13th Street Southwest, there's a little mobile home park on the northwest corner, and to make the intersection line up, we may need a little bit of right-of-way there.
Is it safe to assume that this entire project can be done in 24 months?
It's possible, yes, if right-of-way goes smoothly and utility relocation is expedited.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Bob, the July 1st deadline for everybody else to join in, are we going to create kind of a development frenzy here with a bunch of projects trying to rush in, and all of a sudden the road's going to be over capacity by July 1st? I mean, I'm just concerned here that this is going to encourage a lot of rapid development to come in, and are we ready for it? Can we handle it? Do we need it? I'm just concerned about that date.
I think that's a good point, and the concern on staff's part was having this open-ended and no end to this. I think the applicant, if he wants to speak, will tell you that he has a lot of other developers waiting in the wings, and they're ready to come in and do it. I don't think it'll be problematic for us, and I think the applicant feels that there are a number of other developers coming in that will do this, which will represent a significant part of the reimbursement for him. I think one of the advantages we have here is the applicant, instead of the county doing a project like this, since the county has its plate full with all the other projects that we have, and maybe an opportunity to get it done a little less costly. Generally, the private sector can do things a little less expensive than the public sector. So those are two benefits that we're hoping to achieve here.
Okay, and then the traffic certificates will be a 5-year?
Yes, right now, until we amend Chapter 910, we have 1-year certificates and 5-year certificates. When we amend 910, if it's amended as recommended by staff, we'll have 1-year, 3-year, and then 7-year certificates for prop share and other similar types. So right now, the 5 years kind of the default that we pretty much have to go to.
Well, and if we do change 910, will this be grandfathered in, or will this still be under the 5-year?
It'll be grandfathered in as a 5-year, yes.
Oh, as a 5-year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Yes. Has this applicant ever built a county road before?
No.
So how do you get your expertise and know you'll come in on time, under budget, without an overrun, and to everybody's satisfaction?
Jerry Swanson, Peanuts Properties, the agent for Oslo 27th LLC. Never built a road before, but ever since I was a little boy and I got my first road grader, something I wanted to do. and now I'm going to have the opportunity to do it.
Oh, give me a break.
I like that. I like that. I know what you're getting for Christmas. It's a real grader.
The truth is that we hired the same professional that the county did, and we hire professionals to do this work, and we supervise them and make sure it gets done.
Well, sometimes the professionals do a good job and sometimes they don't. And we have a real problem now with our roads. So, I mean, I'm not being funny here. I'm just trying to really get you on the record of saying what is your expertise and how are you going to get this done?
Well, our expertise is that we've done a number of projects in the county for the last 30 years. And they've been excellent projects, and I think most people will not take exception to that. But we have an excellent track record, and we do have excellent relationships with our professionals, and we intend that will continue. And then my staff can tell you here, we ride herd on the people that we hire, and if they don't respond properly, we get rid of them and go on to another party. So I don't think that you'll have a problem with the private sector doing these roads, and we work very hard to get to this point. And what Bob said about staff, and I'd really like to thank the staff because and administration, this really took a lot of work on everybody's part. So.
To clarify the length of these different sections, on page 146, I don't know if I'm reading them correct. 0.5, 1.5, 0.5, and then 5, 25, 6. What are the different lengths? How many miles?
2410S, which is the link between 13th Street Southwest and 17th Street Southwest, is a half a mile. And there's also then, aside from building the half a mile link, there you have to build another 1,000 feet each direction for the gradual flow back into the two-lane highway. So that one I'm familiar with, and I'll have to defer to staff on north of Oslo whether those are half-mile links. I believe they're a mile and a half link, but Bob, you'll have to.
Correct. The Oslo to 4th Street is a mile and a half, and 4th to 8 is a half mile.
And the other one's a half mile.
Yes.
Okay. And how will you prevent bottlenecking? Like we'll do these 4 lanes, but we won't 4-lane all the way out. So how do you?
Bowden, we're not building the roads north of Oslo. We're only building the link south of Oslo. You need to understand that. Chris Moore.
So what happens?
Yes, Chris Moore, Assistant Public Works Director. What they'll be doing is they'll be designing a standalone 4-lane section of 27th Avenue from 13th Street Southwest to 17th Street Southwest. At the same time, the developer to the north is designing a standalone section, 4 lanes on 27th Avenue from 5th Street Southwest to 13th to mate up with Mr. Swanson's section, but they're being designed standalone with transitions from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, long enough transitions so that traffic can flow smoothly into and out of each section. If they're all built at the same time, which is staff's hope that they can all be done at the same time, then the transitions in the middle will not be necessary and they'll all be built as 4-lane sections.
Okay, and what is the time frame to hopefully get this total package done, your project and the other projects?
I believe we have 24 months in the developer's agreement, and that's our goal, to get them all done within that time frame.
And what is the penalty if we don't get it done? Just aggravation for the community? Or is there a penalty?
We will get Oslo 13th to 27th done. within the 2 years.
We're getting this, we have to keep in mind, this link we're getting done ahead of time. This was not scheduled to be done, and we moved it into our 5 years. So what we're trying to attempt is to get it done ahead, probably this is being done about 5 years ahead of when it was proposed. So the overall outcome will be that we will have the road done quicker than we would have initially had it done.
Or we'll have the headache quicker. We don't really need this road at this point. We're accommodating this for your development. Is that correct?
We feel we need it if they are to move ahead.
It's not in our plan.
Well, we moved it in our plan. We feel that any roads we can get done ahead of time, it's for the better of the community. We think that any roads we can move ahead on our schedule will be in the best interest of the community.
Okay, let me backtrack then. Maybe I don't understand. The 2 roads, 2 links are in the 5-year plan, but the 3rd link we're talking about is in the 20-year plan. It's not in the 5-year plan. Is that correct? And it's...
That's correct, but when we were going through the capital improvements program changes that we just made and that just became finalized a few months ago when we sent the January comp plan amendments back to DCA, we tried to find a way to put this segment of 27th Avenue in there.
And why did you try to, I'm trying to just narrow this down to understand this simply because you've spent many, many hours, days, weeks on this, and you want us to look at this and pass this within 30 minutes or less.
Well,
so I'm not trying to be, but I really want to understand this because this does set the path for the rest to come along.
I think we have to be realistic. You're looking at 43rd, 27th, US 1, and A1A are the only ones that link us to other counties. Those are going to have they're impacted by their counties. They're going to have to be our main arterials. We should work at getting them, especially when you look at what's being built in St. Lucie County. That traffic's going to impact us whether we like it or not. We have to be realistic about it. So I think those need to be widened. The quicker we can widen those projects, I think the better it is for the community and the safer it is. It's not a popular thing, but it is part of what happens when you have growth.
If I may also, Ms. Bowden, since January of 2005, the development community has been talking with administration and staff about finding a mechanism so that we could build roads to go forward with our projects that doesn't impact the county so that they're not putting out hundreds of millions of dollars to do this. This was a small effort on everybody's part to come up with a template that may work for other sections in our city and our county. The other thing is, you want to know how do we move this along and why do we move this along? The county is required we put 15% or $650,000 additional money up, so that when that money, when the road is completed and it comes in at budget, $4,650,000 or whatever it was, only then do we get that $600,000 returned to us. And that's money that isn't spread among the other developers. That's simply Oslo and 27th LLC, and that's a check and balance to make sure we do our job properly.
Okay.
I'd just like to follow up on that. I got a couple of questions also, but first, just I think from my perspective, one of the positive things about doing it this way is because from talking to you, Jerry, and I think a lot of the development that's going to take place down there, other than what's already coming out of the ground, is commercial. And I think that's going to help alleviate some traffic further north. I know the bank is one thing that's looking at going down there, which means people will be using that branch rather than driving. Actually, a number of banks. Yeah, uptown. So I think the commercial element's going to also, I would think, help alleviate some of the traffic in other areas in the surrounding area of the county. And I'd almost be willing to bet that being that the private industry is doing this is going to get done probably quicker, better, and cheaper. We'll wait and see. but it wouldn't surprise me if that happens. The other thing is as far as a private developer building a road, and we'll be monitoring that, but we've had some mess-ups with the roads we're building ourselves. So, and I'd like to know from Chris, when is Oslo going to be done in that area, that time frame to tie into the 4-lane of 27th and so on and so forth?
Actually, it's on the agenda today to be begin work, and I think the time frame is, isn't it 8 months or a year? I might be incorrect on that. They're shaking their head that I'm incorrect.
It's longer than 8 months. The section that is before you today is from basically Timber Ridge to 27th Avenue. And I believe it's about a year and a half.
18 months.
How about the whole section there, Jim, from, say, Timber Ridge all the way to, out to 58th, I guess, and the section in between 43rd and 27th. When's the completion date for the whole project out there?
Okay, well, 43rd to 27th is coming right behind the eastern link from 27th to Timber Ridge. And we've got, I think, 1 or 2 pieces of right-of-way to acquire there. We've already done some of that in front of the Winn-Dixie, but and the bridge is already built at 43rd Avenue. So that 1 mile will probably be sometime next year out to bid. The link between 43rd and 58th, we have finished the bridge at 58th. That 5-lane bridge is in, and we've stubbed out just west of 43rd, and we're engineering that in-house. We're talking to Citrus Springs about stormwater treatment. So that project will probably begin next year also. So we hope within 3 years to have all of Oslo complete, from Kings Highway to Old Dixie Highway.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff or not? We'll open the public. Yep.
Just real quick, I understand what Commissioner Bowden was trying to say, and really what hurts my mind here is the fact that we've had a developer come forth with a developer's agreement that's able to get it done in 24 months, and we've got one in our 5-year capital improvements plan that we can't guarantee is going to be done in 24 months. And I think that that's really, and so who do we hold responsible? Well, we've got it in writing with this developer, but we need to hold our staff and our county administrator responsible to see to it this is done in conjunction with this developer's agreement in 24 months, so we have some continuity of traffic flow, and that's exactly right.
And the other part being, we don't ever know what kind of year we're going to have. It's a risk. We can have 2 more hurricanes in a year, and then where are we? And who pays for the overruns? And we need to have that buttoned down, that the county does not pay for any overruns, even if it's a national disaster.
I think if you read your developer agreement, that takes care of that.
Well, no, I don't read it. That's our attorney that does that.
Okay.
There are provisions for adjustments to the actual cost. These are estimated costs, and we've agreed that we and any other participating developers would true up to the actual costs when they're finished.
And let me comment on the other point.
Again, for Commissioner Davis, our road is being designed as if no other 27th Avenue link gets built. And so we are going to build our link. If nothing else happens, there'll be a 4-lane highway between 13th and 17th. And I can't believe that's not going to happen. The rest of the road isn't going to be built.
Well, and I agree, and we're hearing that from staff. But Mr. Swanson, you're the only one that has obligated yourself to a 24-month period, and yet you just came up with this idea about 6 months ago on how you were going to get this accomplished. And I go back again. Ours is in the 5-year capital improvements plan. It's in our comp plan. It's ready. It's scheduled to be done. But from the county side, it's frustrating to say that we can't guarantee we'll have it done in 24 months. And that was Commissioner Bowden's concern. Is it's painful, and it wreaks havoc on a community, as we all know, whenever you start road projects. Yet I'm sure the public understands when they're done properly, and Commissioner Bowden just like to see it done more in a seamless fashion to get it over with one clean cut versus having it segmented and hodgepodge.
I guess I've learned that road building is an animal within itself, and it's a beast.
But he's been working on this since childhood, so.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bob, Mr. Swanson,
Mr. Swanson.
before you sit down, I got 2 things. One, Bob, in this agreement, how is the commercial development, the retail and everything tied in with the road project? Does the road have to be completed first? Is that the carrot to make sure things get done, or how is that timeline?
No, the way concurrency has evolved at the state level, the principal objective is to get the infrastructure committed to be developed. So essentially, as soon as this agreement is approved and within 14 days he will post the security, at that point he'll get a concurrency certificate and he can go forward. He can get building permits and he can get COs. So at this point, nothing will be tied to the road actually getting built. But he has made commitments and the county has made commitments to make sure it will be built.
Right, but I guess, and it goes back to Commissioner Bowden's concerns, he can open his shops up,
right,
and, well, it's taken me longer than 24 months, sorry, and I'm in business, though. What's the carrot to make sure that road gets done if he can get a CO before the road's done?
The 115% of the $4.356 million that we're going to be holding.
Right, but he's going to get a lot of that back by July 1st if all these other developers are going to jump in and pay him back.
No, he won't get it back. The county will hold that in escrow, hold that money in escrow. He eventually would get reimbursed with that money.
Not the $650,000, so the 15% is not reimbursable.
Right.
Okay, and then that $5 million, is that actual cash in escrow, or is that just a letter of credit?
It's a letter of credit.
It's an irrevocable letter of credit.
It's not costing him anything then? So we don't have the money then?
No, it's a letter of credit with us named on the irrevocable letter of credit.
It's irrevocable. If it does not live up to his obligations, it's irrevocable letter of credit at our call. So we could pull it at any time.
All right, so we can pull the letter of credit?
Yes, it's our discretion.
Well, and then
It's an irrevocable letter of credit.
All right, so just heads up here, I guess, Jerry. I would not vote to extend that letter of credit if 20 months from now the road's not done. Okay?
I saw that happen last week, so I'm familiar with that.
Okay. And then real quick, again, I keep going back to this possible frenzy. I know probably some of your agreements might be private, and I understand from a business point of view, but can you give me an idea, just ballpark percentages of the other projects that are going to be joining you? What percent is commercial and what percent is future residential?
I have a list of companies that have called me or we've been in discussions with, and we haven't really gone any further than preliminary discussions until we got this agreement done. And number one, we didn't want 50 attorneys wanting to put their input into this agreement. The other issue was we wanted to make sure it was approved by the commission. But we have phone calls and conversations with 220 trips. That's how we're doing this. Oversubscribed, 2 of which are residential projects. The balance are, and I would guess there's probably 10 or 12 other people that we've talked to that are all commercial.
Thank you. Okay.
You know, the other thing I'd like to, some of the concern here, having this done in time, within 24 months before you open shop, or you can open shop and it's not done. This isn't new. This has been going on in this county for years with our 3- and 5-year plans and 10-year plans on roads and people building because it's on the, in fact, I think Route 60 in 1996 was on the state's 5-year plan and still isn't completed. And we've got a lot of roads that have been in that situation where we've allowed development because they were on a certain plan and they haven't been built. So we're really holding Mr. Swanson's feet a lot closer to the fire than we've held our own. So I'm just saying that we're not giving him something. We're demanding more from him than we've demanded from ourselves in the past.
I can assure you, Mr. Swanson, and the development community is going to make every effort to hold the county's feet to the fire also.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, good.
And I'd like to also point out, Route 60 is a state road that keeps being moved back, not a county road.
Right, and one clarification with that.
I think I said it was a state road.
Yeah, I just want to
make sure. It was on the state's 5-year plan.
Yeah, and one clarification. That was a non-construction phase that generally state roads are built, there are several phases that they have to go through. First is PD&E, project design environmental, then design, then right-of-way acquisition, and finally construction. And each phase gets put on DOT's 5-year work program. And back in 1996, that was one of the earlier phases, not construction.
PD&E.
Yes.
PD&E phase.
Yes.
And I think, and the only point I'm trying to make in all of that is the fact that I really think government in general, not just county government, state government, federal government, we have a tendency to expect less from ourselves than we do from the people we're serving. And, you know, the farther down the food chain you go, the worse it gets. You know, the federal government passes rules and exempts themselves from it. Then the state government passes like sunshine law and exempts themselves from it, and right on down the line. And we're down to the lower level now, and we're almost doing this similar. But anyway, if there's no more questions of staff.
Can I make a comment on the road projects? Just 2 comments, if you don't. One is that we're going to make every attempt to get that other link done. It's a longer link, a little more complicated, but we're going to, and I'll come back with a schedule because I know it's a concern of Commissioner Davis as the rest of the commissioners. Let me come back with a schedule of that and when we anticipate to have it done. But we are making every attempt to get our roads done. In fact, that's why we've come up with this private-public partnership, and that's why I called a meeting with all the developers over a year ago, and it wasn't exactly a popular meeting to tell them they're going to have to start doing roads if we're going to keep going.
Joe, and I appreciate that, and I'll tell you, I think in the last 2 years, with this commission and also with the previous commission, I think it became a priority, and you've responded well in getting a lot of these roads built and started, and the bridges. So it wasn't just a comment, just kind of a general comment, and that's kind of the way things have been working. So, but anyway, if there's no further questions, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to be heard on this matter? Mr. Johnson? Go ahead. Mark, you can take this one, and Bob, you can come up for this one.
Mark Brackett, 1915 34th Avenue. I just want to take my hat off to staff and Mr. Swanson, his staff as well. I was in on that meeting a year ago with Mr. Baird, and it's been a long road to create a partnership where developers stepped up and yoked themselves with the county to get some of these much-needed road projects done. I've been on the outside looking in as Mr. Swanson worked diligently to get this moved to the point that it is today, and I've had a chance to scan the agreement this morning and talked to him about it some in the past, and it appears to be a good partnership arrangement and one that's much needed here in the county. And so I urge the commission to move forward because I think this is a giant step toward addressing the road needs in the future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bob Johnson, Corwin Subdivision. I have some questions. Joe mentioned the impact on 43rd. I tend to agree with C.N. Bowden that this project's not needed. We talk about the traffic from St. Lucie County. St. Lucie County, we seem to cooperate a lot with St. Lucie County, but it's not reciprocal. We wanted to make improvements on Route 1, and they didn't agree to cooperate with us on building that bridge on Route 1 between our 2 counties to help alleviate our traffic. The link that's in the comprehensive plan that we were talking about that's not included, quite a bit of effort goes into making these comprehensive plan and long-range plans and modeling and traffic surveys. And I don't think we've discussed the impact of moving this ahead of another project in the comprehensive plan. We continue to improve roads to move traffic into Route 60, and all of us, we continue to try to resolve Route 60 problems like Point West in our problems, and here we're doing this again. We're making 27th Avenue a 4-lane, which will eventually end up going into Route 60. on 27th Avenue. We haven't discussed the designs on what the intersection at Oslo and 27th is going to be. The folks from Turtle Creek have said they're going to build the road to 5th Street Southwest, and as a resident off 5th Street Southwest, as all of you may or may not know, the best part of the county to live is between 20th and 58th Avenue Southwest. That is a great part of the county to live. And what I see happening is that we're getting boxed in by all of these developments and traffic, and all of a sudden we continue to work on roads that are going north-south, and we have yet to hear what's happening on the staff working to get the traffic from Oslo Road on 58th Avenue to Indrio Road. This has been discussed many times, yet we don't see any results, at least being shown. Now, I do know that they've been talking to developers and so forth. So we never heard what the impact would be on South County Initiative. When South County Initiative was discussed, this was supposed to be the whole South County solution to the traffic situations and what have you, and now all of a sudden we come up with an emergency initiative. So I think if we're not careful, the traffic on 43rd, I see all these lines being drawn by surveyors and what have you, and a bridge that's going to be built on 5th Street Southwest and 43rd, and I see all these surveyor markers on 27th, and I'm not sure if we're not careful if anybody will be able to get out of 5th Street Southwest on that part of the county. So I think we need to be very cautious as to how we proceed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Renzi?
Good morning, Renee Renzi, Waverly Place, Vero Beach, and the Civic Association. Just a simple question. I've seen references to Oslo 27 LLC in the paper and in these meetings for several weeks now, but I have no idea what it is. Can anyone tell me what Oslo 27 LLC is? What does it comprise?
Well, perhaps, but it's a corporation, but development, it's a name.
It's a limited liability company consisting of P&S Properties and a group of Johns Island investors, and called the Gibb Group. And they're longtime residents of Indian River County, and we're longtime residents of Indian River County. And we're personally guaranteed on letters of credits and on the agreement. So those are personal guarantees.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson.
Well, thank you, but I'd like to visualize what will be there when they've done their work. What will be that development when they're finished? Is it going to be apartments? Is it going to be factories? Is it going to be houses? Is it going to be shops? What is it?
I promised you I wasn't going to talk today. It's a 44,000 square foot project, of which there'll be a restaurant, or two restaurants of 4,400 square feet total. There'll be a medical building. There'll be a retail, about 20,000 square feet of retail, and some offices. It will be a very desirable neighborhood center, And this is, the purpose of this project and is to take traffic off the roads and make more neighborhood centers.
Okay. Sounds like another downtown, right?
A smaller downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Thank you, Renee. Anyone else wish to be heard on this?
My name is Jens Tripson, 2525 14th Street, Vero Beach. I think, as you all know, my family used to own the property at where is now Millstone Landing, which is just south of 17th Street Southwest. When we had our agricultural enterprises there, the road needed work. This is a project that's probably 5 years overdue. I would highly recommend you go ahead and move along with this proposal and get this project done. The traffic now with those houses coming online is going to be intolerable. So please follow through with this and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Anyone else like to be heard on this matter? If not, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask this county attorney to weigh in on this, and is there any, have we closed every loophole, and this will be done in 24 months under budget, and even though he's never built a road before, but visualized as a child, he can do this?
I think we've tried to close every loophole. Whether it comes in under budget or not, we're not sure. It's going to be put out to bid through the county's demand star system, and the county will have some say as to who will be actually constructing the project.
Does the developer have to agree with our recommendation, or will we recommend, or is it a joint decision, or how does that exactly work?
Well, we'll use our system to generate the bids, and they'll make a recommendation that's got to be acceptable to our Public Works Director.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the developer's agreement and authorize the chairman to sign.
We have a motion. I'll second it. Any further discussion?
One question for Bob. What's the total capacity that the widening will add to 27th Avenue? And I think Mr. Swanson said he's oversubscribed at 220 trips. So is there leeway, or where are we at on that?
Well, it's a 2-mile segment of 27th Avenue that we're talking about, from Oslo Road to the South County line. He's actually proposing to widen a half a mile of that. If you were to widen the entire 2 miles from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, you would gain 792 trips, hourly trips of capacity. Since Mr. Swanson is proposing to widen only a half a mile, or 25% of that, we calculated that his gain in capacity would be 25% of that 792, or 198 trips. Now, he's mentioned that he has oversubscribed over the 198 to 200 or 220. He can only gain 198 trips worth of capacity with his widening, though. So if someone were to want to come in after that 198 had been used up, then they would have to do a similar agreement to keep going south and widen the next half mile to gain another 198. So in short, he's adding, by doing a half a mile of 4-laning, he's adding 198 trips worth of capacity to 27th Avenue.
Okay, I guess I keep coming back then to July 1st. If we're oversubscribed, then as of July 1st, that link will then be deficient again, before it's even built.
Well, again, if all of it is, if all of the users
200 come in,
yeah, if all the
July
users,
1st, then that road, that new link that's not even widened yet, will be deficient.
Yes, it would, if that were to occur, yeah.
And then 2 other things. Do we have from 17th Street Southwest the county line? Is that in the plan somewhere? When that will that all be done as well?
Yes, that's in our long-range plan to be done. It's not in our 5-year capital improvements program. Each year, we update the capital improvements program to put in a new year and reflect the year that was just completed. So we anticipate that's one of our highest priorities. So in the next couple of years, we anticipate putting it in the 5-year CIP.
Okay. And then last, I know in the new 910, which we haven't approved yet, but there is some wording in there about a breaker switch at 75 or 85% capacity. At some point there's a breaker, and then things go to slow down and approve it by building permit. Are we better off postponing this until we've done 910, or do we go forward with this and then we'll have a road segment that's deficient before it's even built? I mean, I'm having a real hard problem with this thing being deficient before we even turn over any dirt.
We probably would not allow, when he says he's oversubscribed, we're not going to give concurrency over our limit. I think what Mr. Swanson was saying, that he's got people that are showing more interest than he's got trips. Those could be speculators. We could not give concurrency over our existing limit of 198 trips. So, and these would be, I think there's some incentive here. The reason they're probably doing that is because of the impact fee credit we're giving. They're taking, these are paper trips at this time. These developments cannot move ahead, and they have to weigh what they think the market's going to be. They may not build right away, but they're getting in line and getting their concurrency. They're concerned they may not be able to get that, and I think that's where he's talking. We cannot oversell trips on that road.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just kind of allay some of Commissioner O'Brien's concerns. As of today, when we approve this agreement, the trips for this project will be loaded into the system. The project is designed, you haven't had the opportunity to pull a building permit yet because you haven't been able to invest your impact fees. Therefore, he hasn't even pulled a building permit for this project. But yet, because he is going to be able to build a project because it's in our program and able to move forward. And yes, it very well may be at capacity by the time he finishes the project. But you're going to have people right now stepping forward and participating in this program, and in fact putting ghost trips on the system because they've seen what's happened in the past in Oslo Road and 27th Avenue. They can't pull a building permit because there is no trips and there is no capacity. Therefore, they are going ahead and they are allowed, if they participate in this, to vest their program or their projects well in advance and in effect put ghost trips on there. So if it does become a broken link, it won't be a broken link with actual trips. It'll be like some of the other roads we have, like on US 1 area where we have ghost trips hidden because we've got projects like WCI that have written like a $5 million check to vest their projects well ahead of anything even going in.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yes, sir. The motion was to approve the developers agreement with the maker, and second, amend that to include also amending the capital improvement element to add this link to the 5-year plan.
I was just going to do it right here. We can do it all in one. I was just going down the list that staff recommended to approve the developers agreement, and we kind of did it a little out of order than what they wanted. But if that makes legal feel good, I'll accept that to approve the developers agreement and have authorized the chairman to sign and approve the comp plan, since we've already had the public hearing on that. I assume, Mr. Chairman, that we're finished with that.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I wish you well on this, because if you don't do well, I don't see this type of thing progressing. And we'll all be looking to see what goes on. And I hope you can do an A-plus job and show our county that it can be done under budget with less staff than ours.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0.
What's the break?
Yeah, we'll break 6 minutes early before we go into the next 10 minutes.
Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment.
Call the meeting back to order. And next item under public items, Tim Glover, President of Friends of the Sebastian River, regarding 512 widening project.
Good morning. Tim Glover, President of Friends of St. Sebastian River. I live at 9660 Estuary Way in Sebastian. And a couple of weeks ago, I had written a letter to the Commission addressed to Chairman Wheeler regarding some of the issues and concerns we had for the project of the 512 widening, especially where it crosses the St. Sebastian River, and specifically the project that's ongoing there to build a stormwater park on it's a parcel of about 15 acres. As a result of that letter, we ended up meeting a few days later with Mr. Baird and some of the county staff to address the concerns and issues that we had raised. And I want to thank them for that time that we had that day. We resolved most of the issues and the concerns that we brought up in the letter. In the letter, it also requested some specific action on the county to address those concerns. And then subsequently, I wrote a second letter, a follow-up to Mr. Baird that you should have a copy of there also, stating the outcome of that meeting. A couple of the best results of that meeting were the county had agreed to provide an environmental specialist who would have the opportunity to examine project work sites to look for issues that could potentially be problems, such as in this case. Not that they would have the expertise to resolve whatever issues might arise, but would at least bring them to the attention so that the county or contractors of the county could address those, and so they wouldn't become problems. One of the other things that came out of that meeting is that the county agreed to work with the Humane Society of Vero Beach to address the issue of gopher tortoises on the site, and that's still an issue as far as I know. As far as I know, there's still existing tortoises out there. The Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has contacted us and has asked us if we would file a complaint so that they could provide a wildlife law enforcement officer to come out to the site to examine it. We haven't done that at this time. We do have our board meeting this evening, and we would going to be discussing that issue. Preferably, I think it would be our preference if the county would address that or initiate that process, because presumably to address the ongoing issue of the gopher tortoises that still remain there, there will be some permitting required. So we're hoping that that will move forward and be addressed by the county. Again, we're going to discuss that at a board meeting tonight to see which direction we feel we need to go with that. There still remains concern over how the tree ordinance didn't apply in this situation, and I presume that that will be some fodder for future discussions. There's other persons, obviously, that have been involved in the tree ordinance that are more intimately involved with what it currently is and how that might be changed. One of the issues that I overlooked on the subsequent follow-up letter, and that we didn't really completely address at the meeting with the county staff on December 1st, was that of the nature trail that's on the site. Part of it has been installed, and there will be additional trails as far as I understand once the project is completed. But in our follow-up letter, I just didn't make the comment that it would be our preference that it would be an unimproved trail, something along the lines of what's at the Orca Oslo Riverfront Conservation Area. The trail that's there now, or at least the part that they've already installed, is a little bit more larger scale and a little bit more improved than I think we envisioned. But that's one of the lesser issues, I think, of what's happened out there. There still is concern, that we still have general concern about how this all happened and the mess that was created out there, perhaps due to lack of oversight or how the project was managed and therefore the accountability. So in the original letter that I addressed to the Commission, we were asking for that there be some sort of independent investigation to try to learn about all these problems and try to avoid them for the future. Obviously that, I think, is ours and certainly ought to be everybody else's ultimate goal, to try to resolve these kind of issues and prevent these kind of problems from happening in the future. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that to your attention as a follow-up. I know you have copies of the letters that I've presented, and if you have any questions, I can answer those, but otherwise, I'm not sure if there's other folks here that want to address the issue, but I haven't organized any kind of group to speak, but anyway.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, what Mr. Glover brings up are some legitimate concerns. It started on a Friday afternoon, if I'm not mistaken, about 4:30. I forget the date, but I got a call from Councilwoman Andrea Coy, and it started with a broken off well and sediment fences not being properly installed and land being cleared that didn't belong to the county, that belonged to a private individual. And Friday afternoon at 4:30, it was almost more than I could even comprehend, it seems like, as far as the mistakes that were taking place. To staff's credit, Ms. Coy was very complimentary of Michael Zito, and I believe, Joe, you were out of town, I think, at the time, and Mike started the process. But what I see and what I've seen with meeting with several individuals up on site is it's almost like you said earlier, Commissioner, is that, it's not do as I don't do as I do, but do as I say do from the county. And I see how our tree ordinance, how that could play directly into what we have done on this site, and how we can use that tree ordinance to help to mitigate and offset some of the impacts that we've had. I also had a follow-up meeting with a group of individuals from the Sebastian River Landings. They have some concerns about what their retention pond's looking like and what it's going to look like in the future. And if we were to follow our tree mitigation ordinance, as we have told everybody else in the county they will do, this would be an opportunity for us to perhaps place some trees there where we were able to move it around. Now, if we've got an ordinance that's more restrictive than we feel like as a county we can live with, then maybe we shouldn't have the ordinance, is the way I see that. And I'm not saying do away with the ordinance per se. There's a few flaws in it, don't get me wrong. But this has been brought up. I've had several meetings and with the individuals there, and I think that in some correspondence that I've seen from the county administrator, that we have some plans coming forth to have our environmental lands manager do a walkthrough on some of these properties that as we do road widening projects, prudence would suggest that we have our environmental lands manager walk through with either if she doesn't have the full expertise, to have some other individuals along with her to be able to point out some of the obvious pitfalls that we're going to run into. This is clearly not going to be the last road widening project that this county does through lands that we decide is so important in this community that we've bought it to put it inside in conservation in perpetuity. We're going to be doing this on Stony Brook or Shadowbrook Farms. The land that we just extended the option on. We're going to be doing this adjacent to the buffer preserve. This is something it's going to continue to happen. I don't see necessarily this being an issue from the layman standpoint on 27th Avenue and Oslo Road right now. But that doesn't mean that it won't be. But obviously, as we move forward in building roads either through or adjacent the conservation areas that this county and this community has set aside and decided that we're going to spend $75 million of our own money, much less what we can match through the state and local efforts. Because we hold this land in such high regards, the least we can do is at least pay attention to our own ordinances as we plow through it to widen roads.
I need to address, there is a little confusion on the ordinance. There's an exemption in the ordinance, and maybe the commission doesn't want the exemption. But the exemption on 927.06, paragraph 3, the removal, trimming, pruning, and alteration of protected trees, specimen trees, or other vegetation in any existing utility easement or right-of-way, provided such work is done or under the control of the operating utility company, and said company has received all necessary licenses or permits to provide utility service within the easement. So that's an exemption in our ordinance presently. And the reason for that is so that, utility companies and the county, we can clear to get the appropriate right-of-way to put all of the utilities in, and there is that exemption. Whether a lot of people didn't realize that exemption was there, and maybe that needs to be changed or the language changed somewhat, but there is an exemption.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, looking at this and trying to sprinkle some common sense in the ordinance, if you have a tree that's in the way of a power line or something like that, I understand that. But what this was a whole-scale clearing of an environmentally sensitive area.
This was a butchering.
Yeah. And so there is differences, and I don't know what the nuances should be in our ordinance if we need to address that. But if we're going to clear a 12-acre site or 17-acre site and create a pit in the middle of it for water retention adjacent to one of the most fragile, I'm not going to say fragile, but one of the most precious, I'll say, natural resources we have, so much we've created a greenway around it. I mean, this is just, it flies in the face of everything that we've tried to get accomplished, I would say, with the greenway, with the environmental land purchases and everything in the past 6 months here. And
I had asked Mr. Glover, because one of the things we had done is we had left the Friends of Sebastian out on the input of putting the trail in, and what their concerns of what we had done in the stormwater. And correct me if the problem they had was the path that we put in was an elevated path and a little wider than it should have been, but I didn't hear on that area that we had done, and correct me if I'm wrong, much wrong in clearing the stormwater area. I will say this, we are not happy about what happened out there. Staff has met, we spent hours with all the interested groups. We have looked at how to correct it. I'm not happy. The buck stops right here, and I have not run from it. And the commission, it's not the commission's fault. It's the county administrator's under his control. Even though the paper was nice enough to say I apologize and tried, that's not all I did. We had meetings. We have looked at how to correct it, what we should do in the future so that it doesn't happen, and we've come out with some solutions. And we plan to work with these groups. And I'd like to also point out the county has done a lot. We've moved that road 5 times. It's been designed to protect the environment. We bought that other land. We moved it to keep care of the historical trail, moved it. We spent to have it redesigned 5 times. That's why it's a little, it's like putting salt in the wound. For us to have done all that and have these errors occur, it's very annoying. Because now all the emphasis is on this area, yet we did a lot to try and protect the environment, and hopefully we won't have it in the future, and we're going to take preventative measures so that it doesn't happen, and that's my goal.
I've got a suggestion. I've read through this, and I've talked to a few people, and I think the first gap we have to bring together here is the gap of what credibility do we have in dealing with this? And I agree with Mr. Glover. I think there should be an investigation into why this occurred, how it occurred, where the mistakes were made, who did what, and where all this lies. And the problem is trying to get in my head, how can we do an investigation? Who would do that to keep it independent and to have credibility? And I'd like to suggest that we appoint Wesley. It's in his district. He's been probably more familiar with it than the rest of us. And if and I'll put this in the form of a motion, but I can't put it in the form of a motion yet. But anyway, what I'd like to see happen is Wesley, you could get with the necessary people, the Fish and Wildlife or the Friends of the Sebastian River or Dr. Baker or some of the players here, have a, for the sake of a better way of explaining it, a bipartisan group to look into this with perhaps our staff and reevaluate what happened, why it happened, how we can prevent it in the future, and also what consequences should be placed on us as a county for doing this. Because I do like equality, and we hold other people's, and we all make mistakes, and I just don't want to see this thing, apologize, move away, let's fix this, but let's find out how this happened so it doesn't happen again in the future. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to implement what you just described, have Commissioner Davis form a committee group to take an impartial look at this project and come back to the board with recommendations to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I'd second that. I'd also ask Wesley, as this thing moves along, and I don't know whether it'll take a week or if it'll take 2 months, but if it takes a little longer, I'd kind of like to see some updates so we're kept in the loop as a commission as to what's going on, where we're headed with this.
And maybe some recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, absolutely. Well, Joe's got some recommendations, but I think, and I appreciate that, and I'll certainly take that task. I want to let him know it's not going to be a witch hunt, but it will be certainly trying to get to the bottom of it so we can come up with a plan just as simple as when we move forward with Phase 4 of County Road 512. We've got all the interested parties on board, not just from those that are concerned about the environmental side of it, but also those that are concerned about the road construction side of it, so that we can go forward with as little impact as possible and do it properly.
I'd prefer we spend our time on solutions, and I think you say it's not a witch hunt, but two of the individuals before we even started looking into it told me they wanted fired, and I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I'll be right up front about it.
And that's why I mentioned that I'm not after.
Well, it's not going to be an impartial group.
And that would not be part of my motion. It'd be more of an investigation, focus on coming up with recommendations going forward to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and I'd like to,
Would this be in the sunshine, or would this be a private, or how does?
Well, it wouldn't have to be in the sunshine unless some other commissioners were involved in this committee.
And I also suggest you limit it to just this project, because I spent hours on what happened 10 years ago to somebody. I don't think that does any good.
Well, I'd like to leave it to Commissioner Davis's discretion as to, how we should handle this.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, and I don't think anybody's perspective here, it's not a witch hunt. We created a problem here, and I'm not sure I understand exactly why or how or whatever. We need solutions, and we need consequences, and that can come out of there. And Joe, you or other staff members can be involved along with the other people. And Wesley, I kind of see as being a facilitator and a moderator.
I can do that.
And keep it equal and peaceful.
I'll do that.
Before we vote on this, Mr. Cox, I'm sorry, Will?
Yeah.
The question came up about sunshine, and generally any committee that the commission appoints to make recommendations would be in the sunshine. Now, what I understand is you haven't established a committee. You've asked Mr. Davis to facilitate a meeting of the people with concerns on this area along with county staff and come back with recommendations.
I'll come back with the recommendations based on
close to the line. I want you to be careful.
I don't know. I personally don't have any objections to it being open, wherever Wesley feels comfortable taking it. I'm just interested in the solution and answers.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
At any rate, Mr. Cox?
Thank you, Commissioner David Cox, Periwinkle Drive. I would suggest perhaps a time certain for this, for the results of this investigation. And the reason that I say that is looking towards solutions and leading by example. The project that Wes alluded to that's coming down the road is the widening of County Road 510, which will cross the very sensitive portion of the South Prong of the St. Sebastian River in the slough area by Gussie Riles and the Shadowbrook projects that the county is in the process of purchasing. And we began efforts, Indian River Land Trust, Audubon Society, and the Growth Awareness Committee with Joe Paladin, speaking with county staff back in May to address our concerns that road crossing be done in a way that was environmentally sensitive. And there were, I won't go into details about that negotiation, but I will say that as of last week, the result of the first phase of this bridge development report, County Road 510 over Slough area, emerged, which some of you may have seen, and Jim Davis had the consultants on the road widening project, Stanley Consultants, produce some options. And so at the conceptual stage, we feel like our concerns were heard, and that we are working in a partnership with the county on this. And there's a long way to go from concept to earth moving. And what we're seeing in County Road 512 is causes some concern in my mind for how we're going to get from concept to the actual implementation. And I think that that's where the importance of this investigation can tie in. And if we have it done in time so that we can learn something from this experience that happened on 512 and put it into practice in the implementation phase of this project, maybe some real good will have emerged from some unfortunate errors. So,
Yeah, I think Commissioner Davis understands the urgency and will move forward as quick as he can.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would ask too, Wesley, I don't know if you'll have it done by next week or whatever,
In
but
spare time.
no, not the whole thing, but at least you're working
something by
committee who
Wednesday?
you're going to be working with and so on and so forth, a formation of this.
Okay.
And, Mr. Muller?
May I speak? I felt I should get up. I'm Steve Muller from Asteller Muller, and obviously there's some concerns about the project, and I will cooperate fully in this investigation to make sure things that have happened that you're not happy with won't happen again, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Muller.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Baker?
I wonder if you could expand that just a little bit to look at the future, because there's many projects that you have that kind of grandfather when they come in for a permit, like some 2 or 3 years, some even 5 years ago. They don't quite develop or they don't quite build what they're planning to do. There's delays. In the meantime, you promote some new tree ordinances or new ordinances, and they don't follow them because they're kind of grandfathered in. I don't think that's quite fair. I think if they haven't started building and they have to renew their permits, then they should follow the current rules and regulations.
Well, from my way, I think that would be part of this, because we're looking for
And I think that I'd like to see that part of it, because then we could look at the tree ordinance and some of these things again, because just out in US 1 now, up there in Wabasso, they clear-cutted a whole area and cleaned out all the trees. And they had a permit before the tree ordinance was passed, but they never got around to doing it. And there is time limits. I think it's a year or something on these permits that you have. And I think they should be, if they aren't going to build at that, then they should be building at their new regulations. Otherwise, they're all coming in with these permits, and the ordinances just get bypassed.
I don't know how long, I know the thing we had with the source that's coming up at some point in time, I think that was a 1-year grandfather, but I don't know on these other things, how long a grandfather?
How long is that? Yeah.
Are they indefinite, or?
That would be a LDP. And how long is a LDP good for?
Different projects have different timeframes. When we're talking about the source, that was a project that was approved 25 years ago, and as Alcohope, and that just kept going on. So the issue there is, did it ever cease for more than a year? So it is a 1-year time period, but did the operation ever cease? With most development projects, we do exactly what Dr. Baker said. If a development project is about to expire and an applicant requests for an extension, the first thing we do is determine if there have been any changes in the rules, and if there have been, we apply those as a condition of giving the extension. Just to tell you a few things, preliminary plats are good for 5 years. And during that time period, they can get their land development permit, and their land development permit lasts the length of the plat. So some of those are long periods. Most site plans are just a year. The project is good for. But once the project starts, then it could be good indefinitely as long as progress is being made.
Thank you, Bob.
And so that commercial, though, that Dr. Baker's talking about, that would have been a site plan, not a LDP.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one. I know Bristol Bay and the Kennedy property has recently been cleared, but those are mostly dead groves.
Yeah, no, this is on the east side or west side of US 1, approximately 61st. I mean, does that sound about right?
Just north of Jimmy's Tree Service?
Yes.
Yes, that's the one.
Yes. I'm thinking it's about 61st, somewhere in that area.
Right. Stan Bowling, County Planning Director. One thing I just want to add to, when you're thinking of the 1 year, from when an ordinance is adopted and when these permits expire, you also have additional time that's taken up if an applicant has applied before the ordinance change. The rules that are in effect before they apply are what applies. So there may be another 6 months after the ordinance is adopted until that permit
or that approval is actually granted. So sometimes you actually run into situations where there's more than a 12-month lag.
Yeah.
There might even be a 2-year lag, conceivably. And I think that's the case with the site that's just north of Jimmy's Tree Service that was being talked about.
Thank you, Stan. Yes, sir.
Bruce Ingman, 600 Cottonwood Road. I'd like to go back to the project, and it's not just the widening of 512. This was 17 acres. It was supposed to be 15 acres. 2 acres was cleared, which shouldn't have been. Good trees were taken down that could have been moved. An artesian well had been hit, and yes, it took 2 weeks to get the proper people to fill it in. Meanwhile, the contractor, dug a trench to the river. When we walked on that Friday afternoon, they started plugging it back up. Yes, pepper bushes were being taken down, but the silt fence wasn't put up till after they were taken down. So all this has gone on right off the highway. And yes, Joe Baird met with us and said, yes, the county did wrong, and now we're going to go forward with this. I just wanted people to know all the things that
I
had really
appreciate
gone
that,
on.
and I think
Thank
all
you.
of that will come out as everybody gets together, and we'll get the whole story and get a full picture we can look at and see what.
Good recommendation.
Yeah, and if we did clear trees where we shouldn't, we will have to put them back. There is no doubt there. And we've looked at that, and we will, and try and make it, we want to correct the problem.
And I thank you for meeting with us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
We'll go ahead and call a question and move on with this. All in favor of this motion, signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. The next is Mr. Mark Good, called the Moon Man, regarding sign regulations, interpretation, Chapter 956, Item K, pages 174 through 175.
Good morning, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Good. I live at 1405 6th Street in Vero Beach. I'm a native here. I was born here in 1964, actually in this building. My wife and I own 2 companies operating in Indian River County. One of our newest companies is called the Moon Man. It's an inflatable rental company. We provide entertainment for events such as churches, schools, county events, public functions, Winterfest 3 years in a row. We are licensed and insured. We have been in business for 4 years with this company. We take pride in our product and service, and we would like to move forward with our company. We would like to be able to offer the items that have been presented to you to other businesses, churches, stores, public events, to help promote their events. We want to rent these items. They're called air dancers or sky tubes. They are lightweight, fun, and attractive, and it's a fun way of letting people know that, hey, something's going on over here. Having these would bring in business to parties that rent them, and everyone involved would benefit from this, including the county. I brought you some pictures, and I also want to put one up on the screen, for it to be seen. Upon deciding to go about this route with our business, I proceeded to the code enforcement office first. I met with a nice young lady named Kelly, which explained some rules and sanctions to me, which brought me to here today. I would like to discuss the interpretation of Section 956.12, Prohibited Signs, Item K. This section states, the following signs are prohibited as of the effective date of this chapter. Such signs have been found to violate the purpose, intent, and specific provisions of the sign regulations. Item K states, banners, flags, balloons used to attract attention to industrial, commercial, or residential establishments accepting flags pursuant to Section 956.11, Number 2, Item I, which is the American flag. As I understand it, under Section 956.12, Prohibited Signs, there is nothing that prohibits me from renting sky dancers or sky tubes as pictured in these pictures. Air dancers are not a balloon, nor are they a banner, or are they a streamer. They have no writing on them to advertise anybody's business or anything that obstructs your sign regulations. Air dancers are fed by air at the bottom, and there's a hole at the top where the air escapes, so they are not considered a complete inflatable. This is what makes them appear to be dancing. This is an attractive way of getting your attention. They are not harmful to customers nor to the property where they would be set up. If allowed, I would set them up in the morning and take them down by nightfall. We would never leave them overnight or running out of business when it is not operating. My wife and I are not trying to turn Indian River County into some kind of circus atmosphere or go against the rules of this county. We do not want to turn this into an out-of-control advertisement situation either. Therefore, there should have some kinds of regulations concerning this, such as this would be considered as a temporary rental only. It should be limited to only one event per 7 days. And it should be limited to no more than 3 days at a time per event, with operating times to only be in daylight hours. They should be considered as a temporary rented item for special events and cannot be used as an everyday attraction by businesses with no exception. We are simply trying to expand our business into a better company and wanted to do it the right way. As our county continues to grow and develop, it is important that we keep up with the ideas and activities of larger areas. As a small businessman, I want the opportunity to offer a unique service to other businesses and residences in our county. If you have any questions about this, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Any questions from the commission?
I'd like to hear from staff on this.
Well, Mr. Good? Mr. Good?
Yes, sir.
What is the height on these air dances, or?
They average from 15 feet, and you can get them all the way to 40 feet. I would recommend to go no higher than 20 feet. 20 feet is underneath a light pole at just about any place of operation.
And their ability to stay in the upward position would be on?
Exactly the way you see them right there is exactly how they would stay.
And that's contingent upon a fan-operated device?
Correct.
Which is supplied by
electric
power?
Yes.
From?
The place of operation, the event that it would be at. For instance, I'm doing Winterfest, the fun zone at Winterfest this weekend, and I wanted to have these at Winterfest. I thought it would be a nice red and green for Christmas to have them floating around in the sky, a very attractive thing. But because I haven't gotten actual clearance to be able to do this, I did not purchase them for there. But I wanted to make sure my wife and I, do exactly what is wanted by us, by the county. There is nothing in your provisions that covers these in any way. But if there was a provision to be put in, I think it would go back to my 5 items as the regulations that could be put on them, especially the fact where they cannot be bought to be used as an everyday, you drive down US 1 and see them in front of the Singular Wireless store floating around in the sky all day, 360 days a year. We don't want that. I think on events when I do the March of Dimes or the art festival, or even the clerk of court has a big event once a year, just for events they could be put up. Or if someone's promoting something for a one-day promotion, just to bring people in and say, well, hey, there's something going on over here, let's go see what this is. In actuality, everybody kind of makes out on it. I make out on it for renting it. The people who rented make out on it for the people coming in and buying or becoming a part of their event, and the county makes out on it with the taxes that are made from the sales or whatever is purchased at that event. I'm not, again, I got a picture of, I think you might have this under your rules. That's a big difference. That's a very big difference between that and that, sitting in front of somebody's place of business saying they're having a special sale, an operation that they want the community to be involved in, etc.
How tall can one order a sky dancer?
You get them 50 feet if you want.
50 feet.
Mm-hmm. Would I recommend that in this town? Being born and raised here, absolutely not.
What happens when the power supply, the fan, is cut off?
That very thin material would probably fall down into a pile about that big, straight down.
Do you think it falls right down, right?
Well, it probably wouldn't fall straight down. It would probably timber like a tree.
Highway or a roadway?
I would not suggest putting them anywhere near the front of like a highway where it would be an infraction to any kind of traffic situation. The only place I've ever seen these is up by doors, up by the front of buildings, or if it's an event, usually an event like Winterfest is off of a main road. I mean, that's in a big field. It's not somewhere that's an obstruction to any right-of-way.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
You done, Joe?
Okay. These would have their place in the middle of the fairgrounds. These would have their place in the middle of the Winterfest. I mean, that in the middle of the Center for the Arts is, wherever they want. I mean, I could see this up at the Clam Bake if they wanted to. As far as putting this in front of a tile or carpet store, or in front of a real estate office, or in front of a doctor's office, or Walmart, I don't see that, and I'll tell you the reason why is we have implemented what we call a corridor plan. We've recently expanded this countywide to restrict the monument signs, to restrict, or not to restrict, but to improve and enhance the landscape, and to make it look less like a 192, if you will, through Kissimmee. And therefore, we've taken a lot of pride in that. So I don't know if what you're asking us is for you to be able to put these in front of retail, or to be able to use these at Winterfest. Because to me, there's night and day the differences between the two. I wouldn't want you to put this out on State Road 60 on the entrance into Point West, advertising for the Winterfest. But as far as it being near where they're painting faces and riding ponies, that would be appropriate. So I guess really my question to staff is does our ordinance allow for what I'd like, what I don't mind, and what I do mind?
Yes, it does. I think you articulated it perfectly. The county's gone to great extent to try to enhance aesthetics with Carter plans and a lot of regulations, and I think just the discussion from Mr. Good today, with him realizing these, even if they are allowed, should have a lot of additional regulations, that they're not appropriate in many places. But you're exactly correct. These could be used in the middle of the fairgrounds. These can be used in the middle of Winterfest. They cannot be used to attract attention for business enterprises. And I do want to call your attention to our definition of sign, which is in Chapter 901, which is the definitions section of the land development regulations. I'm not going to read a lot of it, but basically A and B there really describe the principal characteristics that signs try to do. They usually try to attract attention, and when they're advertising something, and they're visible from a public place off the premises. And that's one of the reasons we have sign regulations, because every business wants to get an advantage and go a little bit bigger and provide attract a little more attention, and that's what we try to do. That's that's one of the public purposes of the sign regulations, is to try to keep all the businesses on an even footing and let them all have a certain amount of attraction. But when they all try to compete with one another is when you have balloons and banners and flags and everything that detracts from the aesthetics. So staff feels that our interpretation is correct. These are signs based on our definition. They're not appropriate. They're not in keeping with the county's objective. They are appropriate in the middle of a special event, but not to advertise or promote or attract attention for a business or a development project.
Bob, in fact, reading the article in the newspaper about this the other day, and then out this weekend, I saw a couple of housing developments had the balloons on the tethers up probably 100 feet in the air. Are they illegal?
Yes, they are, and I beat you to it with getting code enforcement. Vero Largo had one, and they're probably getting a citation today because we told them to remove it yesterday. Devasta had one the previous week, and they took it down immediately.
There's one in the GHO I don't know what it is now.
Off 20th Avenue?
Somebody bought it from 66th Avenue at 26th, between 26th and 33rd, west of 66th Avenue. They had one up too.
On Trillium, is it? Or
yeah, Fort Trillium.
We will make sure it's down.
Okay. I have a question. How do businesses now get away with putting 20-foot statues of balloons up in front of their business for 3-4 days at a time, and not get anything done about it? I mean, I'm not asking to put something up that can fly away like a balloon and land in our Indian River. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about something that is attractive, but yet it literally is not a sign. It has no writing on it. It has not my name on it. It has not no car dealership's name on it, no grocery store name on it. It's simply something to attract a person into that business. I think if that's fallen underneath these provisions that are in your codes, then I think there need to be some new provisions put in so you don't have to have somebody trying to start his business in the town he lives and do it the right way and present something to you that is not in the code provisions. I think that should totally be looked at then. Or even maybe a lower height on these things would be a presentable thing. But if you notice the one picture, it is the American flag in a tube. And under 956.11, that's the American flag is allowed to fly. Does it?
That's not the American flag.
I'm sorry?
That's the American flag.
I mean, it's in formation of the flag.
I just want to make it clear.
Yes.
It's not the American flag.
But, I mean, you're allowed to put 15, 20, 8-foot square American flags floating around right over top of the sidewalk on US 1, but something like an air dancer can't be put 20 feet off of the road in front of a business. I think that needs to be looked at then.
I don't think we can. It seems like we did an ordinance back when I was on the commission before where they couldn't use the flags like that too.
No, we do allow American flags or flags of any other country, and whenever you get into sign regulations, you get into First Amendment free speech rights, and Mr. Collins may want to weigh in, but that's reflected in our ordinances, and particularly the allowances of flags of the United States or other countries.
Where are we at with this right now?
The way I interpret it is that these can be used inside special events, but they can't be used as a tool to draw to special events.
Well, let's suppose a car dealer sets this up in the middle of his parking lot and it's 50 feet or 100 feet from the road. Would that be considered a special event? Would he be able to use it for that?
If it's visible from the right-of-way and the purpose is to attract attention, no, it wouldn't.
Okay.
But if it's on the property and it's not visible for public right-of-way and it's not to attract attention, they can do it.
Yeah. In other words, at Point West, they could do it. Well, there's right-of-way around the park. They do this in, but that's
that would be allowable out there. What we're looking at is not to attract attention from State Road 60.
And I mean, I see how an automobile dealership could use this. They could have either their financing table or their hot dogs or something set up during their special event and have this over there next to it, not out on US 1, not on any River Boulevard, not out on 12th Street or something like that, but inside their business or adjacent to, some event that's going on there. That probably would be legal.
Right, yeah, I can see where it gets a little touchy, though. I mean, for instance, you could have an event going up at the fairgrounds, and he could be 100 yards, 150 yards from the road, but it'd be visible from the right-of-way of 58th Avenue. I'm just...
Right. And these are the nuances you get into when you deal with sign ordinances. And I can tell you something. The car dealers in this county, I think, have adapted to our rules, and you don't see the violation. You don't see the things in the car dealerships here that you see in some of the other counties.
Yeah.
All kinds of streamers and balloons and a lot of things to attract attention. And I think that's because we've been pretty diligent in implementing and enforcing these rules over time, and I think that's for the betterment of the county and the aesthetics.
So under our ordinance currently, you do special events, but you couldn't do businesses.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
No, I think that
Chuck Meckling, 1999 Point West Drive, and I support businesses being able to expand. A question I have, which, we talk a lot about what Indian River County is going to look like, what Indian River County is about. We see a lot of signs up and down our road systems being stuck up for mortgages, insurance. I mean, we can go on and on and on. And, I want to be a good neighbor and a good citizen in Indian River County. I pick that stuff up in front of our developments. I know that code enforcement says to the private individuals, don't be out there because if you get run over or some accident happens, picking those things up. But when we start to talk about what our county wants to look like, we spend time on corridor plans and concepts like this, but I find it offensive to see all these signs stuck everywhere personally. And if we're going to look at sign situations, I applaud somebody that comes to the county and says, here's an idea of what we're trying to do, what we'd like to do, and they take the time to discuss it with our staff at the county level to get a clear understanding. And we've all talked about these other type of sign concepts, and let's take the human signs, holding things up to promote developments. I don't know how we have that be allowable and something like Mark's talking about not be allowable, because to me, and I know commissioners here, we've talked about this. I mean, what do we want our county to look like? When you drive down the road system, what do you wish to see? And we could take the corridor plans and all the beautiful landscaping, and it becomes to pale when we see some of these other situations all over our county road system. And maybe what needs to be looked at is some of the modifications to the rule things, or I don't actually know if the people evidently that hold these other signs are allowable, because you see them everywhere, and it's just
that's probably
we've had tremendous fights with our builder groups and things like this because we don't allow them out in front of the project, and of course they tell me I can't regulate the right of way, and we've had situations, because I know to the people sitting on the bench, I don't think one of you find that to be an allowable or an acceptable marketing concept. But again, I know we have code within the county, and I just think that maybe taking a look at the big picture to have again the vision of what we wish to see in our county, in our corridors, is what we really should be looking at. Thank you.
Our interpretations are not always nice, clean, and easy. And our interpretation is the human signs are acceptable. And one of the reasons is if someone's not holding a sign but wearing a T-shirt that says homes for sale, would that be considered a sign or not? What we're looking at here and what our interpretation is with the human signs is it's not stuck in the ground, it's not fixed there. someone is either holding a placard or doing something else, and it's not a clear black and white, easy to make distinction, but it goes from are you a sign if you're wearing a T-shirt? Are you a sign if you're holding just a little placard? Are you a sign if you're standing there holding a bigger placard? What our interpretation is, any of those are not signs, but you put something, stick it in the ground, or tether it to something, and that's going to be a sign.
Yeah, if you take that...
Well, maybe that's loitering.
We would be happy to see the sheriff's office arrest them for loitering.
If you take that home for sale sign out and put a campaign sign in their hands, then it's okay. That's where. And then is that loitering?
How many people have we cited, Bob, for the signs that they're sticking in all over the county, the little real estate size signs for, help wanted, buy your house, the roofing that was going on after the hurricane, so on and so forth?
What we do is usually pick those up and throw them in the back of one of our trucks if they're in the right-of-way, and then we try to notify companies. It's more problematic if it's an 800 number and we can't find an address, it's out of the county. Those are the ones that we find problematic. But my direction to code enforcement is, first of all, if it's a snipe sign and it's in the right-of-way, first, particularly if it's a real estate sign, try to call the person and give them a limited amount of time to pick it up and get it out of there, and that's usually a day or two. Otherwise, throw it in the truck and we'll trash it. And we also notify the people. We get them with the reverse directories using the telephone number, and we will give them a warning and eventually issue citations.
Why don't we just throw them in the back of the truck? They'll get the message.
We've gotten complaints about that, and we've.
Yeah. And if you want to educate them, put it on our TV that these are not allowed.
I have another question. How is it that someone is permitted to float in the air in a Winnebago for 4 days over top of a car dealership with people walking underneath it, and I can't put up air dancers? What's the difference?
Can they do that, Bob, legally according to our ordinance?
I know Mr. Batlin's an icon in this town, and he's probably been here a little longer than my family, but how can they do it and I can't offer a one-day attractive way of telling someone, hey, you can come in here without this thing 10,000 pounds falling on your head and crushing you.
You can have it.
This can't fall down on you. How come I cannot offer a safe way to businesses?
Actually, I haven't dealt with that one before.
I bet we will now.
I might have to. That may be an interpretation that gets appealed.
I see where there's interpretations about signs, and I agree with him with the people holding the signs on the side of the road, because half of them don't hold them. They're like pointing down to the ground half of the time. They're pointing up in the air. KB Homes isn't in the sky. They're this way. I'm trying to work with the county as to be able to do this, and I am happy that you say I could do it at events as far as like private parties or sectors like that. But the businesses in this town should have the opportunity to bring more business into their building. They're not allowed to put banners up that say grand opening. They're not allowed to put signs up that says for sale, come in. But why can't they put something up that's attractive to get them to have people come in to their business?
Well, I don't know where to go with this other than that's all right, unless the commissioner is willing to move something other than what we have. Mm-hmm. And
I understand your dilemma, and I'm in the situation of having to advertise a new business and exactly what you're talking about. And at the same time, I think the appropriateness for this somewhere other than on the streets and the highways it can work, but as far as using this as a mechanism for in lieu of or in addition to a sign, I'm at this time not ready to do that.
Well, I think then that the code should look into other businesses in a way that they're allowed to advertise their business or bring people into their business, not so much my inflatable company. But
If you'll get with me, I'll give you my cell phone number. If you see something like that, I'll personally try to deal with that with you.
I mean, there's hundreds of businesses in this town, and the county is very pursuant on growth of this county. And how can companies promote their business if they're not even allowed to put a sign out front that says, welcome, we just opened, you're more than welcome to come in and look around anything. We're stopping all the businesses from doing that. If you read the sign codes all the way down, there's something for every single little thing that a business wants to do in the code. And I think that should be looked at then, because small businesses is what makes the counties run.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Good.
Thank you for your time.
I would like to relook at the human signs. I don't think that's a good thing. They're out there on the busiest highway intersections, and it's really dangerous, and they're out there all day long, and it's just not healthy.
Next item is under public discussion is Andy Baker, Al's Motorhome, regarding a proposal presented to the board about off-site sales in Indian River County, found on page 176. Is Mr. Barker here? Okay. We'll move to the next item. Under community development, a request for approval of a resolution endorsing Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Palm Beach, Inc. as a sponsoring agency for the Samaritan Center eBay store under the Florida Enterprise Zone Community Contribution Tax Credit Program. Memorandum dated December 4th, 2006, found on pages 177 through 219.
Mr. Chairman, this is similar to an item that we brought to you several weeks ago. This is an allowance that the state has created for enterprise zones. You know that the county and the city of Vero Beach established an enterprise zone that includes the airport in the area, in the Gifford area around the airport, and the basic objective of an enterprise zone is to provide various incentives to encourage businesses and redevelopment in an enterprise zone. One of the allowances that the state has is that the enterprise zone group and the local governments that have jurisdiction in the enterprise zone can endorse certain nonprofit entities and designate them as sponsoring agencies, and that's the request here of Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities is setting up an eBay business that in and of itself has several objectives, one of which is training people for job opportunities. By being designated as a sponsoring agency, Catholic Charities then would be able to accept donations from corporations, and the corporations would get a break on certain state-level taxes. This doesn't have any effect on local taxes. It won't affect the county or the city of Vero Beach. What it will do is provide an incentive for businesses, corporations to make donations to, in this case, Catholic Charities, and enhance the overall enterprise zone objectives. With that, both staff and the Enterprise Zone Committee recommend that you approve this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move we approve this with the following attachments 1 through 4.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Under Public Works, we have approval of a joint participation agreement with FDOT and Resolution Oslo Road, 27th Avenue and 10th Avenue. FDOT work program number 421861-1-58-01, and bid award for Indian River County bid number 2006-091, project number 9705C, Oslo Road, and Phase 1 roadway widening from Old Dixie Highway to 27th Avenue. Memorandum dated December 5th, 2006, found on pages 220 through 255.
The county received bids back in September for the 4-laning of Oslo Road from 27th Avenue to where the existing 5-lane section is and just east of Timber Ridge. The low bidder was Sheltra and Sons Construction. They're out of Indiantown area. They just completed the US 1 work for the DOT near 4th Street, and they've done several projects for the county in the past. The bid was $10,142,868.95, which is about $1.8 million under the second low bid. We've been holding up awarding the contract and waiting for the DOT to send us the grant documents for the TRIP grant of $4 million for this project. And we did receive the agreement, so we packaged the agreement, the DOT agreement, with the bid award in this one agenda item, and we're requesting that you approve both the DOT agreement to capture the $4 million TRIP grant that MPO office, Phil Mattson, was working with us on, as well as award the bid to Sheltra and Sons as the lowest and most responsive bidder in the amount of $10,142,868.95.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I move to approve.
We have a motion. I'll second that.
And just questions?
Under discussion?
Yes. Mr. Davis, looking at this, I believe that most of the right-of-way necessary or in this project is already cleared. Is that correct?
Yes, the right-of-way was cleared so the utility poles could be relocated to the north, and there was about maybe a 30-foot area cleared.
I guess really what I'm getting at in this and looking at it, we are not going across any environmentally preserved land.
No.
But we are going across the xeric scrub. I
don't believe there was any xeric scrub in the claim, mainly pine and palmetto.
To the south of it, as you go across right there at Timber Ridge. And then
we haven't.
All I'm saying is let's not let what happened on 512 happen here. I'll just jump straight where I'm going. And if we need to, maybe this is a good opportunity before we even get our recommendations back from our committee to have Beth Powell maybe take a walk through and just tell us if there's any pitfalls if she hasn't already.
We've already started that process.
Bless your heart. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion? Not all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0.
I did want to point out also on that project, this is over 2 miles of 4-laning. So if you do the math, we're about, if you take the utility work out of it, we're about $4.8 million per mile, which is economically much less expensive than many of the other projects you've recently approved.
Yeah, good job.
So it is I think a good bid.
Yeah.
Next item is approval of the joint participation agreement with FDOT and County Road 512 Phase 4 and FDOT work program number 421862-158-01 and accompanying resolution memorandum dated December 5th, 2006, found on pages 256 to 280.
This is a similar joint project agreement as the one you just previously approved, but this one is for Phase 4 of County Road 512 to capture $2.7 million. We already have a $2 million grant with DOT on that project, so when you add these two grants up, we're $4.7 million of DOT participation, and we requested you approve the agreement and the accompanying resolution. Also, the one before, there was an accompanying resolution that I need to get on record that you approved that resolution also. I think that was in the agenda item.
The only thing I see missing here is the bid.
Yeah, we haven't bid this out. Of course, we're working on permitting and final design.
How far off were we on that? January?
We're getting a little snag on a couple of issues environmentally. There's some permitting issues with some mitigation work we're proposing. We have to buy an island on the river as mitigation for building the stormwater pond on the buffer preserve property. And there has to be an appraisal of this island, and it's probably going to be mid next year until we can get this pond acquired and get the island purchased.
We had no idea they're going to require us to have the island purchased.
Is that a real island or a man-made island?
No, it's a real island in the Sebastian River.
Not like Lost Tree?
No, it's a real island. It's a nice island, but unfortunately, next year, middle of next year.
Unless we can acquire this island quicker. I mean, that's something that Roland Du Bois is working with us on. Bob's staff is working with us on environmental land acquisition.
I assume we're talking about this when we have it under contract, or we don't even have it?
Actually, the issue isn't buying the island, it's getting the state to accept the fact that the island could be developed with at least one house. Because what we're looking at is trying to prove that there is uplands on the island, because that's what the state really needs for us to use it as mitigation. We've been working with the seller who had an environmental survey, and we're still trying to persuade the state that there are uplands up there that would be adequate mitigation. So we're working with it. We actually do have an option agreement to buy the island.
Okay. All right, good.
Yes.
Concerned about us talking about it and holding up the whole project.
When does that
also.
run out?
I'm not sure when the option agreement runs out. Well, I know that we're getting an appraisal. We have to have an appraisal, getting it done, and immediately. Hardy's doing it. I checked on that yesterday. But I think we do in this case have a willing seller, so that makes it easier.
But it seems to, I assume that we've hired an environmental consultant to tell us that there is habitable land on this island.
That's Hardy's. That's why we've got Hardy involved. He's also does a lot of our environmental purchases for land acquisition.
Okay.
So he's very familiar with it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
We didn't have a motion on this yet, did we?
I move to approve staff recommendation for a resolution. And
second? Yeah. And any discussion further? Not, all in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next item under commission items is, I read this letter the other day. It was written on December 5th by the attorneys for the firm representing Cloud Grove, which the majority of that is south of our county line. And just an excerpt from the letter here. It says, as I mentioned, the purpose of the meeting is that this was requesting a meeting with each of the commissioners. This was a meeting as a courtesy to the commissioners in order to give them a brief overview of a proposed bill being presented to the Indian River County Legislative Delegation on December 14th, 2006. The bill is creating a special assessment district for all of Cloud Grove property, which includes approximately 1,400 acres in Indian River County. And my concern with this is first, there's been a lot of talk and conversation, I know, with the cities, with some development districts, but I don't believe we've had any in the county yet, and there hasn't been much dialogue or education or background given to this commission. I don't know how familiar people are with it. It's a taxing district that belongs to the developer, basically, instead of the government. And the other thing that I have grave concerns about is the fact that they're doing this through a special act of the legislature instead of coming to the commission here in St. Lucie County. And also, if you look at the map, they're showing a proposed intersection at Oslo Road, and to my knowledge, we have not approved. I think it's 106th Avenue. I know we've commented on it and stuff through staff, but running 106th Avenue up into our county to dump their traffic from this DRI in Indian River County. And based on what I know so far, I'm opposed to that even. So, and let alone the DRI. And the other reason is I don't know why they need to include this. And maybe I'm missing something, but in our county, because when we had conversation with them, if I recall correctly, they mentioned that they wouldn't be developing this property in our county. They'd be using it for borrow pits and so on and so forth for the development down there. So I don't know what the advantage is to even have it in a CDD in Indian River County. And I would ask that the commission would send a resolution over with Mr. Baird, perhaps, to oppose this special act of the legislature that Cloud Grove is asking for on the 14th at City Hall.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just as fate would have it, I did have the opportunity yesterday, as you see the schedules for the commissioners, to meet. I did meet with Ernie Cox, Cynthia D'Angelo, and I forget one of the person's name. And again, I expressed the concerns about the 1,400 acres and that they have in Indian River County and what their plans are with it. And I told them in no uncertain terms it concerned me just as much that they didn't have plans with it or for it as much as it did that they didn't. And what I had requested of them to do is I gave them Bob Ulevich's phone number. And if you remember from our St. John's or from our Water Management District's meeting, I suggested they get in touch with them because there had been some discussion about the C-24 connection to the south and being able to provide some 300 million gallons of water coming in from the St. John's Marsh. And I said, if you really want to get some support from the commission for not your project, but for the 1,400 acres that we have in here, is do one of two things. Either you take your 140 units over into St. Lucie County, or let us know what your plans are with that and tell us that it's not going to be anything other than basically either agriculture purposes. I said, I'm not after a conservation area. It could be a borrow pit. Quite frankly, it could be the corner block or the cornerstone for a future reservoir down there to be able to tap into the C-24 project that is yet to be obviously designed. And what the Cloud Grove representatives were wanting was really not a letter of support from this commission, but really a letter of no objections, I guess, to the CDD. It's really not a CDD, a special assessment district. I asked the very question, why are they not going through the commission in order to get the special assessment? And the response basically boiled down to the fact that since it went across jurisdictional boundaries, that getting it from the legislature was probably cleaner, is their response.
Well, that's easier for them.
Well, I'm just letting you know what was said.
And why do they need it if they're not going to use it? Well,
and that's what I told them. I said, if you really want the support from this commission, I said, one is not the fact that you can do a new town, because are on the process of taking that language out of our comprehensive land use plan. I said certainly the 1-to-1 or up to 1-to-1 gives everybody heartburn as far as the density bonuses. So, but finally I told them that if you could come in with a plan and tell us this is how you're going to get your water, and perhaps we can join with you in trying to get some future water needs, working with Bob Ulovich through the St. John's Water Control District, it might go a long way. So with that said, that's just letting you know what they were thinking from their side and a little bit of the direction that I gave them just as a commissioner that I'd like to see.
One of the things that, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but just to follow up on all your conversation with them, one of the things that I think is important that you don't come individually and segment us all out, but you come as a group, and so we can hear what everybody's concerns are, and you can explain it all at one time so we all hear it the same.
I would agree with that. Also, could you define the difference between what I call the CDD and a special taxing district? Do they have different functions?
The community development district versus the special assessment district, no, because the question was asked, as a matter of fact, of me, is they understood that Joe had some concerns with the special or the CDD concept. And I said, I don't know what Joe's issue was with it, but I think really Joe's concern was basically people were getting something on their tax bill that as a commission we had no control over.
Well, and I went to one of their meetings too with Cloud Grove out at the Richardson Center, and they said, well, we're not, they didn't want to say they were transferring densities, they're transferring points. Mm-hmm. And, but it's a transfer of densities. You can call it whatever you want. I mean, if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. And all these fancy, anyway, I'm just absolutely opposed, and in fact even offended that they're coming into our county with their 1,400 acres and asking the legislature to pass this. And we had notice of this on December 5th. It was distributed, put in our mailboxes. I happened to look at it, finally get to my mail 3 days ago that was in the box, and I'm sure that they've been working with probably lobbyists and the size of this group and lobbyists and legislators. So I'm just concerned. I don't know where it's going to go Tuesday, and I won't venture to guess at this point, but I'd like to send a strong resolution over to them asking the legislature to respect our home rule the best they can and not allow them to come up and put a special taxing district in our county on a piece of property they told us they have no intentions of developing. And the problem I have sitting here the last couple of years, I'm finding out that I've always known business has been more effective and efficient than government probably, but you know, the problem with these big developers is they're looking 20, 30 years down the road, and we tend to be looking as a commission, as elected officials, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road. And they're so far ahead of us, we're just not ending up on the best end of the proposition here when these things come forward.
So you would like to move this up to the top level of the legislative priority when you talk to the group?
It's a priority to me. And if the commission agrees, I'd like the legislators to know that this is not something that hopefully unanimously we are approving. In fact, I'm opposed to it, adamantly opposed to it.
Okay, does somebody make a motion?
I'll make that motion that that we send a letter of objection to this to our legislative delegation.
I second, as well as we should.
And not only a letter, but somebody absolutely expound on this at the meeting.
Well, we will be at that, and several of us will be there.
Yeah.
I think Chairman Wheeler would be the best to do that.
Beg your pardon?
I think Chairman Wheeler would be the best, would be the most effective.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. But I'd like to show that we unanimously, if that's the case, and it sounds like it is. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, looking at this, and I told them that this entire commission has some serious concerns about what their future plans are there. I said, and they looked at me and they said, well, do you think we can get it accomplished, you know, something with a reservoir or something with the St. John's Water Control District? And I said, well, quite frankly, I don't know whether you can get it accomplished or not, but I'm just telling you that that's a concern that we have out there. And I'm not speaking for the commission. I'm speaking for me. I want to see something but nailed down out there, so we don't have this ambiguity going forward.
And I think your proposal, a few weeks ago, I think it was it's good. Give St. Lucie the density
if they want it.
If they want it, and parts of St. Lucie definitely want it. So
right,
and that would.
I have a question.
I'd feel comfortable then that this is not going to be developed.
Right.
I have a question why they would need it. If it's going to be a reservoir, who are they going to assess? I mean, in the CDD.
And I asked that very question. What it is that road that's going north, what is it, 106th? Because part of the infrastructure is going on this, in their theory, their thought process, with the road connecting from the north to the south, or from the south to the north to Oslo Road and over to the interchange. Those improvements are in that part of the county. Therefore, they are assessing themselves right now, is what the thought process is.
And then they'll roll that assessment back into whoever they sell the property to in St. Lucie County.
Right.
And it comes up to, let's see, they've got the future, it comes up to 9th Street.
Oslo Road. Yes.
Yeah, they show, okay, this map has got,
improvements outside.
Yeah. And where, Bob, is there any time frame on that at all yet? I mean,
no. What's going to happen is they're in the DRI process, Development of Regional Impact process, and what they need to show as applicants is if they the traffic that they're creating from their project, they have to mitigate impacts on any roadways. They have proposed this road, the road connecting to Oslo and then over to where we hope to have an interchange. And I think they're looking at either phase 2 or phase 3 that would be constructed in. I think our discussions with them have been that we would like to see our consultants run the numbers, run the models, and see exactly what's going to happen. And would like to present that to you because our consultants right now, excuse me, are indicating that without Cloud Grove, without that traffic, there's not justification for an interchange at Oslo Road. Without making any commitments to them, we want the analysis done, and we want to be able to come here and show you what your options are, what the impacts would be, and then make a decision based on that.
Well, I can tell you, as far as I'm concerned, and based on what I know so far, and I'll listen when the other comes back, but if we've got to build that road and empty more traffic into our county so we can have an interchange, I'm not interested in the interchange.
And I think what the models show is most of the traffic just goes to the interstate and then goes north and south. But again, that's the information we'd really like to show you with the numbers, the graphics, the distribution, the assignment. Right now, I can just tell you the generalities that our consultants have told us. And what they're telling us is without that traffic just coming and getting on the interstate, we're not going to be able to justify an interchange.
Well, the other thing is, when you look at this too, Indrio Road extension's a dirt road that runs west of I-95. They really don't show any improvements to that. They can dump their traffic on Indrio Road.
They are planning to do significant improvements to Indrio, plus have an interchange with the turnpike.
I would like to point out that in the statute, and I'm not an attorney, but it says that they can build bridges, culverts that may be needed across any drain, ditch, canal, floodway, holding basin, excavation, public highway. So why would they need to include it to do that? Because the public highway isn't their property. So I'm not sure if that's a good argument.
That's a good question. I'd ask them, Joe. I didn't catch that.
Okay, well, we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Commissioner Wheeler?
I'm sorry, I didn't see that, George. Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler, I have a related matter I'd like to raise, something I've been concerned about at the P&Z. This Cloud Grove is a development that's under the Rural Land Stewardship Act, I understand. And I raised it a couple of meetings ago, asked Mr. Keating whether that could be expanded into our county without amending our comprehensive land use plan. And he said it could not, that it would take an amendment to the comprehensive land use plan, which of course puts it under your control. Today I was told that Mr. Cox, and I haven't talked to him, said that no, that's wrong, that you could do development under the Act without amending our comprehensive land use plan. I suggest we get from Mr. Collins a legal opinion on this and identify if there's ambiguity here. I'm not sure what we do if there is ambiguity, but you at least should know whether or not you have control here or you don't.
So, are you saying that if this is in fact approved by a special act, that they could develop that property under the DRI without our comprehensive plan being amended or us agreeing with what they were proposing?
That's what I've heard hearsay being said by lawyers for the developers. I have not discussed it with those lawyers. I have not investigated it. Mr. Keating said it's not so. And I don't doubt Mr. Keating's word, but it might help if Mr. Collins gave us a legal opinion, had a legal analysis on that.
That would be interesting to know before we go forth for our legislative delegation meeting.
No legal opinions, but I don't know. I didn't think what Mr. Christopher is saying Mr. Cox said would be correct, because a local government's comprehensive plan is law. And I guess Will can tell us if there's anything that trumps that in the statutes.
I'm not sure what the question is. I've heard, can Cloud Grove avoid our comp plan? That's all I've heard.
Well, as I understand,
the question I have would be whether they could do a development similar to Cloud Grove under the Rural Land Stewardship Act without obtaining approval of this commission.
We would almost need to read what the proposed language is for
I
rural
don't
land
see how
steward.
they could. I mean, anything that's being done with respect to that project in this county would have to be consistent with our comp plan and land development regulations.
Not if the act overrides the comp plan, Will.
I don't think it does. I'll look at it. But I don't
Mr.
think
Cox
it does.
said that, though. I'd certainly like to research it, because he's been working on this for a long time.
And he's very, very sharp.
Yes.
And the big problem with this rural lands thing is, it's not just transferring the current land use regulation, which might be 1 unit per 5 acres. They get bonus credits for, natural resource areas and for keeping things in ag, and you take a 1 credit per 5 acres, and it could be 10, 15, or 20 credits. It just blows up. I mean, Adams Ranch, from what I've heard, got way more than what they could under a normal development plan, and they have surplus credits they haven't used yet. And so I'm afraid that our 1,400 acres may be a future site for those bonus credits. So we need to sniff this one out pretty tight.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not too late. Mr. Swift?
Would it be appropriate just to give a quick comment on that?
Yeah.
Because I have some, Bob Swift, 6450 Glendale. I have some familiarity with the process. I'm good friends of the Adams, and we're doing some consulting with them, not related to the Cloud Grove transaction, but I spent a lot of time talking about it with them. I don't know the specific conversation you had with Ernie. I suggest maybe you have him come here and make a presentation to you. My understanding is that the Rural Land Stewardship Act does provide for the transfer of densities and a common development order that crosses county lines, but it can't be done without all jurisdictions' approval. That would require, well, actually, it's what Pulweesy tried to do in Osceola County. They tried to trump the Rural Land Stewardship Program and go right to the legislature and bypass county approval, and they got kicked right back to Osceola County. So the Rural Land Stewardship Program does not bypass local approval. It would allow that transfer and that common planning across jurisdictional boundaries, but my understanding of it is it would still have to come back to this county for approval. Now, it doesn't mean that they couldn't develop it under current county regulations, and I know that conversation had been had. That's what, 1 to 10 down there? So they could come in with a program under the current comprehensive plan at 1 unit to 10. And that may have been, again, I wasn't privy to the conversation, that may have been what he talked about, because I know that had been in some of the vision studies they had, that they might have kind of a transitional rural agricultural development area going into the higher density into Cloud Grove. Okay. But and again, I'm not a lawyer, but my study of the Rural Land Stewardship Act, what was done in Collier County, what's been done in Babcock Ranch, still comes back to local commission for approval of the plan.
Perhaps, well, maybe you could talk to Mr. Cox and see where we need to go with this. I'd just like to make sure we're not leaving a door open here someplace unknowingly. Okay. We have a motion. We all voted, so we're on to the next item, which is Public Works. I'm sorry. It's Special Districts, Boards, Emergency District Services, approval of minutes of meeting of October 24th. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Second is fiscal year 2005-2006 records disposition compliance statement and records management liaison officer form, Emergency Services District memorandum dated December 6, 2006, found on 281 through 283.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Solid Waste Disposal District fiscal year 2005-2006 records disposition compliance statement and records management liaison officer form. Solid Waste Disposal District memorandum dated December 6, 2006, found on pages 284 through 286.
Move approval.
Second. Motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And meeting adjourned.